My entitled family treats me and my husband like garbage and have even gone as far as to call me a gold digger and that I'm only with my husband for money. But after being mistreated by my husband's family for so long, we both decide that enough is enough, resulting in us getting the best revenge possible by changing our last name and disconnecting from them entirely, causing them to freak out in a way that we truly did not expect. Here's what happened. So I got married 3 years ago to my husband, and I changed my last name to his immediately following. My relationship with my in-laws was never super, but it was civil until about 2020 when our differences became obvious and they were hard to reconcile. They have never welcomed me into their family and never put forth any effort to be a part of our lives. At first, my husband just said things like, well, they're like this with new people, or this is just how they are. Over time, though, they have not only managed to alienate me, but my husband as well. They have implied that I'm digging for gold and have called me quite a few unpleasant names. My husband had enough with them during our first year of marriage, and when he went low contact with them, they tried guilt, manipulation, and passive aggressiveness to get him to resume what we would call his previous role in the family. And that role was him basically doing all the work in the relationship. Well, when that didn't work, they basically cut us off. They never called much before, but now they never called. And then act like it's our fault when they don't, and then play the victim constantly. Now, for a bit of background, I have BPD, which stands for borderline personality disorder, and my new last name just didn't feel like me, especially considering his family. After my diagnosis a year ago, my therapist explained sometimes people with BPD struggle with this since we struggle with identity as well. So it's been talked about a lot, and it was then that my husband had suggested that we both change our last names, and I thought it was an interesting idea. I didn't want my maiden name back because it's hard to spell and pronounce, and it's not all that common in our country. Now, I liked his last name, but it was such a common last name. We talked about this for about a year, and we settled on my deceased grandmother's maiden name. It's common, it's easy to say, and it's easy to spell. And we feel this honors my family, who we have to thank for our lovely life today. It was surprisingly easy. We set up a court date, we filled out the papers, we had a hearing all within a few weeks, and then we changed it on social media. Well, his family found out and they are super pissed off. And some of my family found out and they're pissed off. They said we had no reason or right to do this. I told all of them it was a decision between me and my husband, and it was not up for debate. On his side of the family, they cut us off and never even talked to us. And on my side, no one even owns the name, and it left with my grandmother when she passed away. One of my aunts tried to say that I needed their permission, but in my opinion, the only person I would need to have permission from would be my grandma or my father, but both of them have passed away already. My mother thought it was a great idea, and so did my siblings, but we are getting bombarded, and we're currently trying to gray rock all of them. But it's not like this was a rash decision. We are both very happy with the change, but the amount of backlash I've been getting has me wondering if we messed up by not announcing it or telling people in advance. What should we do? Okay, first off, you have every right to change your last name, especially if your husband's family is going to be treating you like crap in the way that they have been. Seriously, from day one, they've been treating you like garbage all the time, saying that you're digging for gold while also calling you all sorts of names, and then also trying to alienate you and your husband all the time. I mean, who in their right mind would want to stay in a family like that? Like, if I was in your shoes, I would have the same conversation. I would be super pissed off that I'm still getting treated like garbage by these people who literally are masquerading as family. And then they're the ones that freak out all because you guys say, okay, we're going low contact, this is insane. As if they want you to stick around and enjoy this awful treatment. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. If you guys want to change your last name and no longer associate with those people, then my God, you have every right to do that. Because based on what you've described, these people sound like an absolute nightmare. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that I was done inviting her to parties after she repeatedly took the leftovers that I had without asking? Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I throw a lot of dinner parties, and I mean a ton. I like to cook, so I always put food on the table, and I would say that I'm a pretty good chef. One of my friends comes all the time, but the problem is that she takes all the leftovers. Every single time that there's a scrap left, she decides to take it. And sure, I appreciate that she doesn't want to waste food, but that is not the problem. The problem is that I want some leftovers too. So I told her when we're eating this time, I say, hey, don't take the leftovers, okay? And she said to me, yeah, that sounds good. Well, fast forward to the end of the party, and lo and behold, she takes the stupid leftovers. When I noticed later that night, I texted her and said, hey, if you can't stop taking the leftovers, I'm not going to invite you anymore. And she says okay to that. The next time that she comes over for a party, I remind her when we're eating, don't take the leftovers. And she again says okay. Well, when she's about to leave, I was sitting near the table, and guess what I see? I see that she's taking the leftovers leftovers again. So I tell her that if she couldn't listen to a boundary that I set, then the clear consequence that I discussed with her was that she would not be invited to any more parties. She then said that it wasn't fair that she couldn't have some, and she was only taking a bit this time. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but I told her I didn't want her to take any. She then says okay and puts them back. Fast forward to the next time I hosted a party and she wasn't invited. Apparently, she found out through the grapevine and she got incredibly pissed off, saying that she put them back and I should have invited her again. Well, at this point, I think she might be right, and that I might be the jerk in this situation. So seriously, am I in the wrong? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're in the wrong. She clearly was taking advantage of your cooking, and she was taking all the leftovers and not leaving you any. In my opinion, leftovers absolutely go to the host, and then they can decide where they want to put them next, whether that's in their fridge or somebody else's. So no, you didn't do anything wrong, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. An entitled old jerk exposes my cards during a poker tournament, resulting in him getting disqualified, banned from rebuying in, as well as getting kicked out of the venue itself. Here's what happened. Okay, so I play a lot of poker as it is a nice hobby of mine, and 99% of the players I meet are super friendly and we enjoy conversation while playing. One of the biggest etiquette violations and rule violations is touching another player's cards. The player can show their cards if they want, but unless it's to prove your cards are better than someone else's, you can throw away your cards without showing. Playing in a tournament last Monday, I'm in a small blind, and everyone's only made the minimum bet to me. I have a pair of 9, so I raised to the equivalent of 3 big blinds. Now, the entitled idiot of this story to my left re-raises me to the equivalent of 13 blinds, and because of this, everyone throws away their cards and it goes back to me. Now, in my experience playing, older players tend to be very tight players, typically only playing high pairs, but they also tend to play a wider range of cards against younger players because according to them, they've been playing poker since before I was born. So I tend to prefer re-raising them pre-flop and playing aggressively. So I ended up re-raising him to the equivalent of 40 big blinds, and I'm committed to go all in against him if needed. Now, this entitled idiot thinks and sits there and thinks some more, and ended up showing me a pair of jacks and said, "Your pair of queens is good," and throws away his hand. The dealer then pushed all the chips to me, and I decide to just throw away my cards. Well, wouldn't you know it, this entitled idiot grabs my cards and flips them over to show a pair of 9s. Now, before anyone can say anything, the dealer instantly calls the manager over and explains the situation. Meanwhile, this idiot is chastising me for aggressively playing a pair of 9s and how he was ahead and should have just called his raise. The floor manager disqualifies him and kicks him out, which causes this moron to literally throw an instant temper tantrum. We're talking full-on toddler rage. He was screaming, "He's not playing correctly. He raised 9s pre-flop. He's an idiot. I folded pocket jacks. This is so crazy," and so on and so forth. Security, as well as the police, ended up dragging him away, and we eventually resumed our play, despite the fact that this guy was making a scene the entire way out the door. Okay, I've got to be honest, I really love this story because this guy is salty that he lost. He's just pissed off because he got outplayed in a way that he was not expecting. And I also love the fact that you said, "Nope, I'm not going to show you my cards," and you instead just throw him away, getting in his head completely, which obviously worked because this guy freaked out. He lost his mind over this, and that's really funny to me. So good for you for getting this guy in trouble, because from the sounds of it, he deserved to get banned. Am I the jerk for refusing to change my bachelorette trip date, all because of one friend who is desperately trying to reschedule it just so it can fit her schedule specifically? Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm getting married this year, and my 16 friends and I have been planning my bachelorette trip. To make scheduling fair, I asked everyone to send me the dates they were not available so I could pick a date that worked for the most people, especially since some friends are traveling from other countries. After going through everyone's responses, there was only one date that worked for everybody, so I went ahead and announced it. That same day, one of my closest friends suddenly said that she had been planning a trip around that time. However, she had never mentioned it before and hadn't booked any flights, and was only reconsidering her date because someone told her her destination might be crowded. Since the condition for choosing my trip date was to prioritize the availability of the most people, I explained to her 3 separate times why that date was final. But despite that, she kept trying to change it. She even created another poll in our group chat to see if others could move their own important plans to accommodate her. She also started privately messaging people, trying to convince them to say they could be flexible. Now, at first, I didn't directly call her out in the chat, but after she made a second poll, I sent a general message stating that the date was already chosen and it wasn't going to change. Well, now she's upset and claims I embarrassed her by calling her out instead of speaking to her privately, even though I had already tried 3 times. I feel like she put me in a tough position, making me choose whose availability mattered more. I understand she really wants to be there, but I also think it was unfair of her to disregard everyone else's plans. I have no intention of changing the date, and honestly, I'm not planning to apologize because I don't think I did anything wrong. What should I do? Okay, first of all, this friend is completely out of line, and they only want to change things because it doesn't line up with their schedule, which, by the way, they had plenty of time to check and double check and really make sure this is something they can even go to. So for them to go behind your back and be like, okay, let's start a second poll on behalf of the soon-to-be bride. Like, that would set my hair on fire because I would be so pissed off if someone did that to me. There's no way on planet Earth I would ever be okay with that. And in my opinion, neither should you. And it's so funny to me that she's trying to be like, well, you could have like privately talked to me about it, when she herself is not being private about any of this. She's literally going behind your back to try and like reorganize your bachelorette trip. Like, she's seriously being a hypocrite right now. So no, you're not the jerk, and in my opinion, I would almost be tempted to be like, look, you just can't show up anymore. I don't want you there, you've been really dishonest, and I just can't have that. Because her behavior, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for not allowing my parents to bring my siblings to my place, as they have a history of breaking things that they get their hands on? Because right now my parents are pissed and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I moved out as soon as I got into college, and from that I shared a college apartment and I moved straight into my own place. I got a nice downtown loft for myself in the same city I went to college, and this is about 7 hours from my hometown. So as you can imagine, I was barely home over the last 6 years. My dad really misses me a lot. He raised me as a single parent after my biological mom abandoned me postpartum, and my stepmom has also missed me a lot and was a fantastic parent to me throughout the years. I miss them both a lot, and we never had much conflict until now. Our main problem here is my siblings. I have a brother who's 10 years old and a sister who's 7. I had little to no contact with them really, but the times I do see them, they're a nightmare. For example, this year I stayed in my parents' home from Christmas Eve to New Year's, and in that short period of time, they managed to break my Nintendo Switch and shatter my phone screen, and both times neither object was left unattended near them. For my Switch, they swiped it from my room by going through all of my things while I was away, and then they broke it. And for my phone, they kicked a ball at me while I was texting, causing me to drop it, which shattered the screen. And this is just the most recent example of them being like this. My place is essentially one big open space. It's a big loft. The only door is to the bathroom, obviously, leaving the rest of this as one giant space. It's mostly occupied by my thousands of dollars worth of music gear, and it's more of an I live in my studio situation rather than I have a studio at home situation. I don't even own a bed. I sleep on a futon, so whenever they want to visit, I just tell them no, and that I will have to go to them instead. I only ever host at my place whenever my grandparents have my siblings, but this is starting to annoy them, and they wanted to know why. So I told them that the reason I don't host them at my place is because I don't want my siblings in here because they will break things, and I don't want to deal with that. Well, my parents are hurt, saying that my brother and sister should be more important than money and possessions, and that I moved away from home without making an effort to be in the lives of my siblings. They also say my siblings are hurt from me not putting any effort into being in their lives, especially since the family talks a lot about me near them. I love my parents, but I think they're being unreasonable, expecting me to allow my siblings here, where they will be surrounded by thousands of dollars of sensitive gear when they have a track record of breaking things. So truly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I don't know what to do. No, you're definitely not the jerk. Those kids are idiots, and there's no reason you should ever invite that into your home. They broke your phone and your Nintendo Switch. That's hundreds of dollars out the window. And with that in mind, just imagine what they could do with your music equipment. Seriously, this is unbelievable. And it's so funny to me that your parents are like, oh, come on, your family should be worth more than just the possessions you have. Love is more important than money. And it's like, oh, there it is. There's that red flag I was waiting for. They're literally excusing any future bad behavior from those kids instead of admitting that it's a problem and correcting them for when they do it. It sounds like these kids are super spoiled and they don't have anybody telling them no, which is only going to result in more bad behavior. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and I think you're smart for saying no, they can't show up. Because even if their feelings are hurt, their behavior is absolutely unacceptable, and you do not deserve to deal with that in the slightest. My toxic in-laws sent her church friends to bother my daughters and myself, accusing all of us of terrible mistreatment while also saying that we're not good Christian women. So I decided to get some revenge by literally exposing them for their lies, forcing them to leave their church and walk a life of shame, as I successfully put them in their place in a way they will never forget ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, so my daughters have a strained relationship with my ex-husband's parents. My ex passed away in an accident last year, and we've had some major family drama since then due to his cheating and him leaving 2 boys born with his affair partner orphaned. She also passed away, and part of the drama has been my ex-in-laws trying to get custody of my daughters and them also trying to live with us. The first one we're going to court over, and the second one will never happen. Where we live, there's a weekend market with fresh produce, eggs, meats, and other products straight from farmers. And this week was extra special since it was my youngest kid's birthday. Since her party is later in the month, I decided to give her a budget and set her loose on the market to get whatever she wanted. And this was mostly chocolate and other sweets. After an hour, I did start getting worried. And just before I called her, she called me. She was crying and saying that some weird people have her cornered. I ran to her with my oldest daughter to find 6 older women berating my daughter for being unchristian, for refusing to spend time with her paternal grandparents, or for wanting to be a good big sister to her poor orphan baby brothers. My daughters are the one that found out about my ex cheating and the babies, so they aren't really fond of the kids. It's a really bad situation and they are working with a therapist. I got between the group and my daughter, telling my eldest to go pay the stuff her sister had and to go to the car. Then I turned to the women, some who I knew from when we went to my ex-in-laws church, and I ripped them a new one. They told me I was worse for refusing to obey my ex-in-laws like a good Christian wife, and I nearly vomited when they said that. Eventually, the screaming turned too loud, and we were asked to leave the market. I met with my girls in the car, and the women followed me like a group of vultures. I managed to get in the car, and then I drove off. After my girls went to bed, I got online to talk to another member of that church that I'm in good terms with. I told him about what had happened, and after he apologized, he told me what was going on. My ex-mother-in-law posted this massive story in the church's Facebook group about how horrible my daughters and I are, how we are leaving them homeless and penniless, and how my daughters don't even talk to them. She also accused us of being the reason she lost her grandsons. The boys are now living with distant relatives of my ex-husband, and basically it was a sob story worthy of a Hallmark movie. And of course, they were getting all the love and support from the more extremist members of their church. This church and its members are a bit annoying, especially any topics related to LGBTQ, but they have a small saving grace. They are incredibly strict about cheating. It is a big no-no, be it from a husband or wife equally. Now you might be wondering, how did she get around blaming me about the affair children without exposing the cheating? Well, she claimed that the other woman was our surrogate since I was unable to have any more children, then said I didn't want the babies because they were boys, which is absolutely disgusting to be accused of. Well, I decided it was time to clean up this mess, and since I was mid-divorce when my ex died, I had all the evidence that I needed. And since the divorce wasn't completed, I don't have any legal ramification for releasing all the evidence. I was off the next day and I went to a print shop to get copies of all the delightful pictures of my ex cheating, his text conversations with his affair partner, the ones with his parents confessing to his cheating and getting support from them, my ex-in-laws bothering me about the divorce, and the final nail in the coffin, all of the emails and text messages from them bullying my daughters about their baby brothers. In one of them, they call my daughters a really awful name and telling them that it was their fault their father passed away since they told me about the affair and I began the divorce. And this one was literally 2 days after my ex died. I paid extra for all of this to be painted in beautiful high-quality paper. Then when I got home, I sat down for hours to make delightfully personalized binders. They even look like the little prayer song packets that the church give out for everyone to take and sing hymns. The first picture when opening the binders is one of my ex and his side woman making out in our living room. Their faces are easy to discern, and the girl looks nothing like me. She had different skin tones and different hair color. Underneath it, I said that this was a love story between my ex-husband and the girl he was having an affair with. Well, the gossip mill was quick and harsh. The names my ex and his affair partner got called in the Facebook group were so bad that the pastor himself had to get involved just to keep things relatively PG-13. People were angry at my ex-in-laws for the way they treated my daughters. But what made me laugh was that I was still in the wrong for the divorce, because apparently it's understandable that I failed on my duties after the shock, and I possibly will one day return to the light, unlike my cheating husband and his Jezebel. They used another word that I can't use here, but I think you can imagine what I really mean here. I then got 2 apology letters in the mail from my girl, as well as an invitation to join the church for support. Now, as for my ex-in-laws, they got shamed into leaving the church. My ex-mother-in-law made a post on her wall about how alienated she feels and how no one cares for the elderly anymore, how she wished her great son was still alive since he would have taken care of her and her husband. But I'm honestly glad I got one over on these people because they truly are the absolute worst. Oh man, this really pisses me off. This is so uncalled for. You mean to tell me 2 days after their dad died, your in-laws message your kids and say this is your fault? Like, what are you talking about? That is crazy to me. For starters, there's no justifiable reason any of these people should be messaging your daughters, not to mention the fact that they're literally putting them down for something they had no control over. And it's also hilarious that they literally ignore the cheating part that literally caused all of this to really take place. Because at the end of the day, if he didn't cheat, then guess what? You probably wouldn't have gotten a divorce. years. So good for you for exposing these people for the liars that they are, because I really feel that's exactly what you need to do when someone tries to lie about your name, especially when you have evidence like this, because the way these people treated you, in my opinion, was so unfair, and they deserve to be shut down in the way that they were. My entitled, narcissistic mother has been actively making up rumors about my girlfriend, claiming that she's controlling me and that she's manipulating me, causing all this unnecessary drama and creating all these false rumors about me and my girlfriend. But after dealing with this for years, I decide that enough is enough, and I put my foot down and I tell her to stop for good. And when I did that, she went absolutely ballistic and has actively sought to try and ruin my life ever since. Here's what happened. So to start off, just to let you know a little bit about my mother, she always told me and my brother that love is not unconditional, that it must be earned. When we were kids, she barely let us hug or kiss her, saying that disgusted her and that is a false and hypocritical way to show love, and that the correct way to show that we loved her was to respect her and to obey her. She would smash the door and windows of our rooms on Saturday and Sunday at 7 in the morning, and she would do this because she was upset at us, because she expected us to already be awake and cleaning the house. And school and grades, she always told us that excellence is the bare minimum you owe me. So if we scored a top score, she would basically be like, oh, you want a reward? That's your obligation. You don't deserve a reward for giving the bare minimum. Anything below that would result in some kind of taunt or being called mediocre, or worst of all, getting punished. She would always tell us, saying, stop acting like a child. You are almost an adult and must behave like one, instead of running around and playing and embarrassing me. And the funny part about this is that she started to say this to us since I was about 7 years old. I was nowhere near an adult. And my favorite, whenever me and my brother were upset with her, or her rules or her punishments, because I'm sure you can guess how my mom is, she loved to punish both of us at the same time. Even if one of us didn't do anything and was totally innocent, she simply didn't care. Regardless of what it was, she would gladly say to us, you don't like it? Well, the door is way big and wide open. You can go. Go away and live in the streets. But you can't take anything, not even your clothes, because all is mine. Your clothes, your toys, your bed. I bought everything. You have nothing. You are free to go, but in the exact same way you came into this world, with nothing. Now, I could go on and on for hours about her, but I'm sure now you can get the idea of what I've been dealing with. So, a lot of years after my childhood, I was finishing up college. I moved from my hometown to study and have better opportunities. My mother already had plans for me. She wanted me to move back at home, find a job that helped her friends, and start a business at her house. Me, on the other side, didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to find a job and be with my girlfriend. I was happy here, and I had a very good chance to build my own life here. But my mom didn't like that at all. And for weeks, she would say multiple times how I was wasting years and opportunities for not doing what she said. One year, after I decided to stay, she convinced my dad to buy another house. And when they got it, she started to say to me and everyone who would listen to her that she bought it specifically for me, so I could live there and work from there. Since then, she keeps repeating to me and everyone else how I rejected her again and I was wasting a good opportunity. After she realized I was doing good here, she changed her way and started to say that my girlfriend was manipulating me, because if I was working, then I should be able to visit them at least 15 days out of the month. Whenever I told her that that was not possible, she would start a tantrum about how my girlfriend is controlling and isolating me. And when I tried to say that wasn't true, she would start demanding that I prove it by telling her how much I earned. She wanted to know exactly how much money I earned, and on multiple times even suggested to give it to her, that she would save it and manage it for me. Whenever I told her no, she would always say to me, I'm not asking because I'm asking for money. I just know best and I want to help. I'm doing you a favor. Don't you trust me? Every time I said no, she would start playing the victim and blame me and my girlfriend for wasting all the opportunities that she gave me. Now, I endured this for years, and with time, I started to get into low contact with her, meaning that I would only contact her if it was necessary, since I didn't want to start another thing of drama, because I really just don't like her. Meanwhile, she began to include my girlfriend's mom into this BS, saying that she exploits me and takes all my money, all while claiming that my girlfriend is manipulating me and has me locked down. This would keep going until we hit a breaking point. At the beginning of last December, I was after a new job, a very good opportunity that unfortunately I didn't get. That put me and my girlfriend in a rough spot, and again, my mother ordered me to come back home with the promise that everything would be solved the moment I got back, and that I could find a job faster and easier there, and that I could even live in her house. Now I have to be honest, I did feel tempted to accept her offer. I even talked to my girlfriend about it, but at the end of the day, I decided to stay. Moving back to my hometown would not solve anything, and that would only carry more troubles. Fortunately, I was able to find a good job a couple weeks afterwards. It's not exactly like the one I was looking for before, but it was good and with a chance of growing. My mother didn't take it well at all. She was mad at me when I called her to tell her the good news. She wasn't happy at all and started to scold me, saying how I always waste the opportunities and chances that she gave me, and how I disappoint her, that my new job would exploit me, and that it would put a test on my character, and that I would fail. And her reasoning was that because I am weak, and everyone there would step over me, which, you know, is beautiful words for a mom to say to their son, isn't it? I started working at the second half of December, and it was good. Then my mother called, demanding to me that I come home for Christmas, and getting mad when I told her I couldn't, because I had work. She started a tantrum about how I don't love her because I don't go to visit them since a long time, and all because I'm selfish, a doormat, and my girlfriend and her family manipulates me. They're controlling me, and they don't let me visit them. And all of that is just stupid and false accusations that multiple times I have told her to stop saying. And when I told her that I didn't want to go to her house because it was 14 hours on the bus, and this was during COVID because of my asthma, and I didn't want to take the risk, she started telling me that I was being ridiculous. I was an idiot and I was exaggerating. She said that COVID wasn't that important, and that the president never even used a mask and always said COVID was under control and all this other stuff. A few days later, she and my dad traveled here for New Year's Eve. As soon as they arrived, they demanded me to visit them on my uncle's house. But she also didn't want me to visit for just 5 minutes like I always do, and instead wanted me to stay here all day from breakfast to dinner. Well, I gently tried to explain to her that that wasn't possible. I had work, but she didn't like it. The most I could do was skip my lunchtime to visit them. But things went worse on December 31st. My uncle, as well as the rest of them, organized a religious ceremony that morning, and my mother ordered me to go. When I told her it wasn't possible because of my job, she got mad, and after that she demanded me to come to dinner, spend all the night there, and stay until the morning. I had had enough, and I just said straight up no. I couldn't do that, and I didn't want to do that. I went to work that day, and I came back to my place, and I stayed with my girlfriend, and I had an amazing night with her and her family. The next day, I stayed at home. We slept in, and I woke up at around noon. I then went to my uncle's house to visit my parents, and that's when everything went down. My mom started with the usual speech about me being a horrible person, as well as a disappointment, and that I don't love them. Then she started with how she kept giving chances to do things the right way, but I just don't obey her. That she could not understand why I don't choose to do exactly what she says. Then she started attacking my girlfriend and her family, saying this is all their fault, that they exploit me, they take my money, they have me trapped and controlled, and it's because of her manipulation that I didn't want to go back to her, and that because of her, I didn't want to live in the house that she bought and find a job near them. Eventually, I had had enough and I just stopped her. I was so upset at that point, and I told her for the last time she was wrong, and she can't say those things about her. She then said, "Well now, the truth hurts, doesn't it? If you're uncomfortable with what I'm saying." And before she could continue, I told her to stop, but she kept on going, saying that not showing up on the day she ordered was a sign of disrespect from me, and that because I didn't go along, this was somehow a sign that my girlfriend didn't respect her. I told her to stop again, and that I had had enough, and I won't allow her to keep saying all this garbage about her. She told me, "You are not gonna forbid me from saying anything. I'm gonna say everything I want because I'm right. I am always right, and I'm always gonna say things as the way they are." After that, I simply had had enough, and I left her with her tantrum. My dad only said that he was disappointed and disgusted at me, that I showed him how I don't feel love or respect to them, and that I just don't want to obey, so he won't care about me anymore. I avoided them for the rest of their time that they stayed until they went back to their home. Things were tense, but I believed everything was over. But no, while I was working, my uncle came to my girlfriend's house. He went with the intention of confronting them and throwing them the truth into their faces. He accused my girlfriend and my mother about everything my mother told him, that they controlled me, they manipulated me, they exploit me, and they're robbing me, and that I was trapped and they were the reason I didn't take all the opportunities that my mother gave me. And when I found out, I was beyond furious. My girlfriend and her family have never done anything to my mother, and in the contrary, they always had cared about my parents, asking when they would come to visit, giving them presents, and they never had a bad word to say about them, always asking about how they are. And now, after all this, my mother had been spreading her BS to all the family, bringing her lies and drama to their home. Finally, I had had enough. I called her, and now it was my turn. I let go every single thing I had to say. I was putting an end to all of this garbage. Multiple times she tried to shut me up, telling me things like, "I'm your mother. You can't talk to me that way. Remember who you're talking to. You have no right to talk to me that way." Even yelling at the phone just to get me to stop talking. But I didn't let her have it. She then said to me, "And what? What do you want now? You want me to apologize?" And I said to her, "Yes, I want you to apologize, just to begin with." She then started laughing at the phone, but not laughing like I said something funny. It was a fake laugh with the only intention to upset me. She wanted to mock me, like she was saying to me I was an idiot for even asking that. The kind of laugh that someone would use to humiliate. She said that it was all my girlfriend's fault once again, and that because of her and her manipulation, I didn't want to move back as she ordered, and I didn't want to live where she ordered me, while also refusing to work where she demanded that I work, and in essence, basically disobeying her. She said that she's now gonna wait for me, my girlfriend, and her family to apologize to her and ask for my mom's forgiveness. I told her she was no victim, and she was being ridiculous. I told her that I was done. I'm tired of her. She insulted me, my girlfriend, and her family for the last time. I want her to take back everything she said, and I want her to apologize. She said that she would never do that, and that I'm an idiot for believing that she would ever think about that. So I told her I won't talk to them ever again until she stops her garbage and apologizes. And with that, I ended my call. After that, my dad sent me a text message saying how disappointed he was, and that he was done with me as well, and that I showed them that I don't love them, and that I'm not loyal to my family, so he was done. It's been about almost 3 months since I cut contact with them, and all the fights, all the drama, they're all gone. The tantrums, the scoldings, the drama, it's all over, and I have been doing great with my job and my girlfriend. Everything is finally going well. My brother had called me a couple of times, and he understands me, but he keeps saying things like, "It's not that big of a deal. I know how our mom is. She says stuff like this all the time. It's normal." He then asked me to fix things with her and to come here for a week at least and do what she says so everything can be normal again. But I told him that I'm absolutely not gonna do that. I know for a fact that our mom is still angry as a hornet, and because my brother is near her, she now focuses all the drama and the scoldings and the fights onto him, and he desperately wants to take her off of him. So that's it. For years, she has been saying all this garbage about me and my girlfriend, and now after spreading her lies to the family, she expects us to apologize to her. Well, with all things considered, I can confidently tell you that that is never going to happen. Your mom is literally a narcissist. Like, this is a textbook example of some controlling, OCD-ridden narcissist who literally just wants to control everybody else around her. Like, that is literally what's going on. So good for you for getting out from underneath her, because she seriously sounds crazy, and you can bet if you went back and did everything that she said, it would still not be enough. You would have been miserable, and I guarantee you she would have actively ruined your life. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. My entitled neighbor is incredibly rich and incredibly spoiled, and while he was a reasonable neighbor at the start of me moving there, he quickly became an absolute jerk, and I really cannot stand living next to him. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened during the pandemic, but there are a few things I need to note first. My next door neighbor is the wealthiest person in the neighborhood, as far as we know. Before the pandemic, he was a reasonable guy, and I never had any problem with him, save one party that got a little bit out of control. But this story took place way before that party ever did. So this neighbor, who we will call Jack, that's not his real name, lives in the house next door to mine with his long-term girlfriend. We'll call her Stacy, also not her real name. And let me tell you something, she is a gem of a person. Since before my father-in-law gave his house to my wife, he would hold crazy parties at his house. These parties would happen every single weekend. He invited us to one when we moved in, and we went just to be polite, but it wasn't our thing, so we politely declined. He was still a reasonable guy and would say, "Come on over, we'll have a blast." But the wife and I always use the kids as an excuse and politely decline. He converted the first floor of his house into a dance club, complete with an indoor swimming pool. One party will always stick out to me as the day we saw a tow truck remove a car from a brick wall. The driver was okay, but the party itself was massive. It looked like he invited the entire town. The next day, he asked me if I would help him move a couch. I guess a couch was thrown into the pool, so I ended up just helping him out and we had a good laugh about it. As I said, even with some of the wildest parties, he's not really a bad guy. He at one point helped me clear out some trees that fell in the woods behind our houses. And honestly, it was the pandemic that caused him to go off the deep end. My town was spared the worst of the pandemic. The school shut down before the orders from the state, and many businesses did the same. Jack, however, did not stop partying. His parties were shut down several times until one day it looked like the entire police force showed up, and they arrested everyone. They were all let go, but the parties were over, and the good fun-loving guy was gone. He organized a protest with his friends and got a bunch of others who hated masks and went to the town hall. But when they found out that it was closed, they tried the county office. For some unknown reason, they went after a supermarket and harassed the workers. And I'm pretty sure it was on Facebook and YouTube. Why these people chose to harass grocery store employees is beyond me. But in the end, they all got arrested again. Now, we were still on speaking terms at this point, but that would change overnight when a buddy of his decided to race their overpriced cars through town. And as a result, we got into a heated argument about it. And he took offense when I pointed out that the only reason he isn't in jail is because he's rich. It's not my proudest moment, but you know what? He had it coming. More recent events include calling the police on anyone that is having work done on their house, as well as calling the police when anyone parks on the street. This guy would even send lawyers to town hall just to disrupt meetings. And most recently, he parked 10 junk cars on the streets with flat tires, wrapping a chain around a piece of construction equipment and putting a very vulgar sign on it. Oh, and his girlfriend usually comes over to apologize for his actions. I am surprised that she hasn't broken up with him, to be completely honest. She is the one to apologize for his actions and will offer to pay for any damages that we might experience. They are still together from what I know, but I haven't seen her in a few weeks. Honestly, overall, my neighbor is the absolute epitome of entitled rich jerks that you will ever see in your life. Yeah, that guy sounds like he is seriously one big privileged ball of fun. I mean, who just parks 10 junk cars on the street and just leaves it there for the heck of it? And the worst part about it is I'm pretty sure this guy could have been a reasonable neighbor. Like, he could have been someone that the original poster could go to and try and have some kind of friendship with, but this rich guy just completely ignored all of that and decided to act crazy the second the pandemic started. So hopefully if you still live next to them, they're at least a little bit more reasonable now that the pandemic is over. And hopefully all of this money doesn't get pointed at you one day, because it sounds like this guy is fully capable of ruining people's lives, and I definitely would not want to be on the receiving end of it. My entitled boss strung me along for 2 years, claiming that she was going to give me a promotion and a salary increase if I continue to work hard and meet all the requirements that she made. But after moving the goalposts so many times and refusing to move forward with giving me a raise and a higher title, I eventually stopped doing all the extra work and only did what's on my job description. And as a result, my manager got in a lot of trouble and eventually got fired. Here's what happened. So at my last company, I was working as a marketing executive. The team included myself and a senior marketing executive. As time went on, I began to take on more responsibilities to the point where I was doing more than the senior in my team, which they even admitted. I spoke to my manager about what I need to do to get a senior position. She gave me goals and a timeline, and I hit those targets. And then she would just move the goalpost, and she did this 2 more times. All the while, I was using my skills to reduce costs and improve the projects I was working on. Specifically, I had started to design everything myself instead of using the expensive design agency, thus saving the company about $45,000 a year. I finally set another meeting with my manager to discuss a promotion. I showed her how I was increasing the profit margins of all my projects, as well as all the extra work I had been doing. But her response was to say, just because you make nice things and do extra work doesn't entitle you to a promotion. Now, when she said that, I just sat there shocked. And then she said, but don't worry, you'll get there eventually, and then ended the meeting. She had led me on about a promotion for almost 2 years. So this is where my malicious compliance starts. I stopped doing anything outside my job description, which included all of the design work. Everything went to the agency, and the whole team relied on my design work. But when I told them why I was stopping, they understood entirely what I was going through, and they all swiftly became quite happy to start using the expensive agency. It wasn't until our next quarterly meeting that my manager noticed our profits per project had harshly dropped. stopped. When she questioned why we were spending so much money, I said to her, well, as design is outside of my job description, we had to use an agency. And when she heard this, she was livid, as she had to share the statistics with the CEO that week, who actually ended up yelling at her in front of all the directors. She tried to give me an official warning for sabotaging the team, but a talk with human resources cleared that away when they realized that it wasn't a part of my role. She then told me that I had to sign a new contract with an updated job description, which I absolutely declined on the spot. Eventually, she asked me what it would take to get me to continue running my projects, just like I previously used to do, and I mentioned the job title and salary increase, and she thankfully begrudgingly accepted. Now, I was seriously worried about her being hostile towards me, but then something crazy happened. COVID hit and this lady was made redundant. I stayed for a further 2 years before finally moving to a much better place at the start of this year, and as of today, my former manager's LinkedIn account continues to show that she's unemployed. And honestly, I can't think of a better person for that to happen to than my entitled manager who strung me along for 2 years. Yeah, your manager sounds like an absolute jerk. They made you believe that you were going to get some kind of raise or some kind of job title, but it was all literally a lie. She probably just did that to try and make you work harder, just so she could save some money on her end. And that is so unfair considering the fact that you went above and beyond just to get everything done with that company. I mean, you were saving them $45,000 a year. How could they not show some kind of gratitude towards your hard work? I mean, come on. Talk about being blind to the facts that are right in front of you. So with all that considered, and with the way your manager treated you, it really is satisfying to see that they are currently unemployed and they now have to deal with trying to find a new job. And with the way she acted, good luck trying to find any kind of reference. An entitled Karen faked an injury just so she could go on short-term disability. And despite complaining to HR multiple times as her manager, HR decided to side with her, preventing me from replacing her completely while also bending to everything this entitled Karen ever had to say. And as a result, I put my 2 weeks notice in, my department fell apart with my absence once I quit, and this entitled Karen got fired for being completely useless. Here's what happened. So I'm a 40-year-old male, and I was the director of sales op for a software company, and this went on for a year. The entitled Karen of this story was on my team, and we were responsible for processing purchase orders. The entitled Karen had a small vehicle accident that put her in a neck brace. She also needed once weekly physical therapy appointments and had some restrictions on duties, all of which I accommodated. It was no issue in the slightest. Now, with that in mind, and despite meeting her needs, this entitled Karen decided coming into work was optional. HR noticed that she was repeatedly absent from work 3 to 4 days at a time, as well as multiple weeks in a row. They did not give me details, but told me documentation from her doctor did not justify all of these absences. To make matters worse, this entitled Karen would never give notice that she was going to be out, and sometimes would just no-show without ever calling, nor indicate how long she would be out. HR eventually told this Karen that she needed to either attend work more regularly or get a doctor's note to sign off on short-term disability. And you know what? This worked for me. I would much rather have this Karen take extended time off so I could also get someone to replace her duties than be absent frequently with no warning and with no one to cover for her. This Karen's original doctor would not document a need for a disability, so she went out and found one who would. She bragged to the team that she found a doc that would sign off on anything. So this entitled Karen went on disability, and I was able to get a temporary worker to cover her until she returned, even though some coworkers told me that this entitled Karen was going to the clubs and was going dancing and stuff along those lines. But you know what? I did not care. That was between her and the HR department. For now at least, the work was getting done. The time period of Karen's short-term disability eventually expired. At this point, she either had to come back to work or go on long-term disability, so I could replace her permanently. The Karen's sign anything doctor would not give her documentation for long-term disability, so the entitled Karen grudgingly came back to work. She quickly went back to being absent all the time. She also refused to do even the basic duties of her job. I eventually went to HR and told them things were not working out and that I wanted to replace her, and thankfully they were on board with this plan. HR brought this entitled Karen in for the talk, but Karen flipped out and said that she would sue. Suddenly, HR was not on board. It didn't matter that the entitled Karen really didn't have any legal standing. Just an empty threat of a lawsuit made HR decide it was more important to make her happy than to let me have a functional department. department. In one instance, I asked the entitled Karen to do purchase order review, and she complained to HR about me bossing her around, despite the fact that I am literally her boss. HR then told me that I could no longer give assignments or work duties to the entitled Karen. When I said that was fine, as long as they would let me hire someone else to do the Karen's job, they refused to give me a request for a new employee. This went on for months, and the entitled Karen quickly learned that she could complain to HR about anything and get her way. You would not believe the accommodation she was given. Meanwhile, she made no effort to hide that she was not really injured anymore. She was barely coming to work, but she was still getting paid. She even encouraged other team members to take advantage of this loophole that she had found. Then, one day during month-end crunch, the entitled Karen didn't come in or call, so I called and asked her if she planned to work that day. It was a simple question, carefully crafted to be neutral in tone. She then told HR that I was harassing her, and then as a result, I got written up. So I immediately put in my 2-week notice. I'm not gonna have my career messed with by a woman who had worked maybe 6 days in a month, especially when I work 60 to 70 hours a week for a company that doesn't care about me. With me suddenly gone, my department fell apart. Purchase orders were not going through, and to address this emergency, a company senior vice president took over the department until my replacement could be found. HR was certainly not going to tell this guy that he could not give Karen any duties to do at work, so this entitled Karen actually had to do her job. About a month after I quit, the entitled Karen got my home phone number and called me. She was furious that she had to actually work now. She told me she was going to report me to HR for a company that I no longer worked for. And sure enough, she did exactly that. I kept in touch with members of my old team, and they told me she was laughed out of the HR office. But here is where it gets absolutely absurd. This entitled Karen called me again, cursing and screaming and threatening me, and demanded that I give her the contact information for the HR department of my new company. She had plans of reporting me to a department that had no idea who she was, nor had any jurisdiction over her complaints. The stupidity was unbelievable, and I laughed right into her ear all the way up until I hung up and blocked her. The last I heard, this entitled Karen was finally fired. She got 0 unemployment benefits and ended up moving her and her kids in with her mom. The HR department of this guy's previous company absolutely failed him. Like, they did not protect him in the slightest. They let this stupid entitled Karen basically run the company and decide when and where she wants to come into work. And that's not fair in the slightest. So I don't blame you for getting out of there when you could. They clearly did not have your back, and they probably would not have done anything to change that situation. And the fact that it fell apart so quickly once you left is obviously a testament to how much they truly needed you. And that at least is some kind of silver lining you can hold on to when it comes to your former employment. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My dad says I can't go to summer courses even though I need to if I want to graduate on time. And despite knowing exactly what I need to do, my mom is also of no help, claiming that I should just listen to my father and do exactly as he says. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I want to take a few classes at my college over the summer, which is about 45 to 60 minutes from home. I plan to drive to school just twice a week, and I'm willing to pay for insurance, gas, and parking for my own money. But my dad doesn't want me to. He prefers that I stay home and help him with his business. He owns a consulting business and wants me to work there over the summer. Since I have relevant background in software engineering and data analysis, he thinks that I would be a good fit. For some background, I'm in an accelerated honors program in my college, where students with advanced standings can finish their bachelor's degree in 3 years and do their master's in their 4th year. I'm in this program, and my plan is to take summer classes and do an internship in the summer of 2024. But my dad says it's not worth commuting to school for classes, and that it will be very exhausting for me. I said that I've driven long distances before, and I spend long hours at school each day, so it really shouldn't be an issue. Then he said that it's better to gain industry experience by working for his business. I didn't know what to say, because he will pay me some money if I work for him, and I don't have to drive out. But I also honestly can't stand being around him for too much, because his hygiene is mediocre, and he burps and sweats a lot, and tends to get mad over small things. I didn't say anything about it, but still said that I need to complete 39 credits by May 2024, and that would require me to take summer classes in 2023. Ideally, all the summer classes are online, so I can stay home, but historically, most most summer classes that I'm looking at are in person, which means I will have to commute. Living on campus is too expensive during the summer, and off campus is cheaper, but too dangerous since my school is in the middle of a big city. Transitioning the course at a closer community college wouldn't work, since my school won't accept the credits. I even asked my advisor about several of them. The schedule of summer classes came out tomorrow, and I really need to take summer classes anyways, even though my dad won't let me, and even implied that I should quit the honors combined bachelor's and master's program, just so I can avoid commuting this summer, save some cost, and work for his company. I really don't want to start a fight over this. My mom always says that I should listen to my dad, and that he has the final say in everything. They seem to have no idea how important summer classes are for me, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Your parents are wrong. You absolutely should not drop out of that program. You are clearly incredibly gifted and very smart. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this program in the first place. You have the opportunity to get your bachelor's degree as well as your master's degree, and quickly at that. For your dad to be so selfish and tell you to seriously drop out of school, all under the guise of, oh, you could just work for me in my office, is honestly so toxic. He clearly doesn't know what he's doing, and he just wants to use you as free labor. That is not going to look good on your resume. You know what is going to look good on your resume? Getting your master's degree fairly early in life. That's going to look fantastic. So taking summer courses and going to school to get it done truly is the best thing you could do at this point, in my opinion. And it's also really sad that your mom's like, you should listen to your father. He has final say. No, he doesn't. You have final say. They have no say in this matter. This is your future you're talking about. If I was in your shoes, I would be finding a way to take out my own student loans and find on-campus housing. Seriously, you have something really good going on in your life right now, and I just would not throw it away, all because of the bad advice from your mom, who clearly doesn't know what she's talking about, as well as your dad, who obviously wants to exploit your talents just so he can get some high-quality work for a relatively low cost. An entitled guest claims that she's embarrassed, both for me and the hotel, simply because the fire alarm went off as a false alarm, and I'm so baffled by her reaction, I seriously don't know what to make of it. So we had a fire alarm go off last night at our hotel. Through the panel, we could see that it seemed like a fault in the system and not an actual fire. However, the classic fire alarm noise started regardless. While my colleague was on the phone with our maintenance, I followed the regular procedure just in case and went outside to the safe point, encouraging everyone to follow along. After a few minutes, a guest approached me. She was in shorts, definitely not prepared for the cold weather, and she was talking to me in such a way that I honestly did not expect. She looks at me and says, "How long is this going to take?" I looked at her and I said, "I am not sure, ma'am. My colleague is currently investigating this. The alarm has stopped just now, so it is probably a false alarm. However, I wanted to be sure all is safe before going back inside." The guest then said, "Well, I may have to ask for compensation because this is ridiculous." And at this point, I'm trying to stay polite as usual. I say to her, "I'm sorry about that, ma'am. I understand that this is an inconvenience, but we are trying to follow the procedure for everybody's safety." The guest then says, "It's not an inconvenience at this point. It's just embarrassing." Now, I honestly could not believe she was saying that in this situation. It took all of my willpower to not reply with something like, "Your embarrassment is the least of our problems right now," or even to say, "What is possibly embarrassing about this? Not letting you burn up in a fire?" Instead, I apologized again and repeated that we are just following procedure and that our guest safety is priority above all. Shortly after, thankfully, we went back inside, as it was a false alarm, but I still can't believe how in that situation, someone could be so self-absorbed. Of course, I understand it is a stressful situation, and everyone reacts differently, and maybe she was just scared. However, I was already nervous because the fire alarm sound is already really terrifying, and you have to try and keep it together for the guest. And the least of my worries is anyone being embarrassed. We are literally just doing our job. There's no reason to give a refund for something that is perfectly normal, and it only happened once that night. Am I in the wrong for being baffled by this woman's reaction? Because seriously, it really was confusing. Because her reaction to everything going on just simply did not make sense. Yeah, the guest that you're referring to is really being obnoxious. And if anything, she was probably talking about how she felt, because she felt embarrassed she was in shorts, standing outside in the cold weather that you guys clearly have. Oh, and by the way, it's a fire alarm. You can either believe it and get out of the place before it burns down, or you can be like, this is probably just a test, or it's a mistake. This is so embarrassing. There's nothing embarrassing about a building being on fire, or even the possibility of a building being on fire. Like, that just honestly sounds sounds like a nightmare, and it's not something I even want to toy with. So yeah, that lady was weird and you didn't do anything wrong. You were following procedure, and I think they should be happy that you took it seriously and you value the safety of everybody at your hotel. Today, I messed up by telling my girlfriend she could use my computer cleaner to organize my spice rack, and as a result, and by complete accident, she sprayed a volatile pepper all over the kitchen, peppering her face as well as mine. Here's what happened. So a couple of months ago, my girlfriend and I first moved in together. It has been great. We have lots of fun together and we love it overall. I've always been an amateur cook. I like to do recipes from different cultures, and due to that, I have many spices that I do use a lot. I always buy the bagged ones since they are much cheaper, but that means my spice cupboard is always a huge mess. After months of living in our new apartment, I decided it was time to get a nice spice rack and have them all labeled in containers, just for ease of use, instead of rummaging through the mess every time I cook. Now, this is the kind of task I would think to be redundant, but organizing and labeling stuff is right down my girlfriend's alley. She loves it and was very excited at the prospect of going to pick out pretty labels and identifying my spices for me. She also has very pleasing handwriting, which is much better than mine. After labeling all my spices, came the time to transfer them from bags into containers. This job required a funnel, which we obviously had. However, having 40 different spices means that you need to wash and dry the funnel between each different spice type. And while I'd usually not mind doing it for her, I was cleaning the bathroom at the time, and thus didn't know how my girlfriend was doing. She came to me in the bathroom while the bath was running, asking me something that I didn't quite make out. But what I basically heard her say is if she could use the PC cleaner. As a side note, I also enjoy building and repairing computers as a side hobby, so I have an electric blower that I use for dusting instead of compressed air cans. I just yelled out, "Yeah, sure," since it's not the first time she's used it. A couple of minutes later, I realized, why would she need to use my PC cleaner to organize my spices? And with that, I left my things there to go check what she was doing. It turns out she was using my cleaner to dust off the leftover spices from the tunnel so they wouldn't mix and match together. While explaining it to me, she did the motion of blowing in the funnel while it was right over a spice jar and accidentally activated it. I suppose the universe had it out for us because the spice she was currently transferring was a type of pepper. The volatile powder quickly blew all over my girlfriend's face, and instinctively, when I tried to reach out to her, I got sprayed as well, and our poor cat was off to the side witnessing all of it. I quickly grabbed her and took us to the bathroom to clean up our faces, while also attempting to fix our airways, turning the fan on and shutting the door. I'm pretty sure we napalmed the entire kitchen. I'm writing this right now from the bathroom about 30 minutes since the incident. My poor girlfriend's face is red and wet, and while I don't know how bad it is, as of right now, the outside world definitely smells very spicy. That is actually really funny. While I do appreciate her ingenuity in blowing through the funnel with the PC blower just to try and make the process a little bit easier, it also, at its base level, was a very dangerous game that she was playing. I mean, with all those spices and herbs that were right in front of her, she was bound to pick a spice that would be absolutely devastating. So at least for the sake of your kitchen, maybe open some windows and turn on some fans, because I think that things are gonna smell and taste like pepper for quite a long time. An entitled man tries to burn up his dog's waste instead of throwing it away in the trash can, and as a result, he almost lights a tree on fire, and the owners of the house were not happy. Here's what happened. So this happened a few years ago. I was managing a room and board and had two guys that had dogs. One of them was a young 20-something, and the other was a 50-year-old in a wheelchair. We'll call them Phil and Steve. That's not their real name. So Phil expected everyone else to clean up after his dog, which went to the bathroom all over the backyard. Steve, who despite the wheelchair, made an effort to clean up both after his and Phil's dogs. That is until one night. I'm on the balcony and I see fire in the backyard. I take off as fast as I can, and it was a pile of leaves next to a palm tree with dead leaves that were long enough to almost reach the ground and like a foot away from the burning pile of leaves. I get to the backyard and Steve is rolling to the hose to put it out. I stay close to make sure it's out, and I finally ask him, what on earth happened? I assumed it was a case of someone tossing a lit cigarette, but nope. That's when Steve says something that absolutely blew my mind. "Well, Phil's dog has been going all over the place, so I tossed it all in the pile and decided to burn it." I looked at him and I said, "You what?" He went on to say, "My dad was a fire marshal. I know what I'm doing." And he says this after burning leaves in the middle of the summer in a backyard full of dead leaves that hasn't been raked next to a near dead palm tree and without a hose at the ready. Seriously, like I said, he was wheeling to the hose to turn it on after starting the fire. So I decided to not argue and I called the owners. I explained what happened and they were not happy. They had another manager from a house down the street that they owned come by and check out the backyard, while Steve was yelling and screaming at me for overreacting by calling the owners. They came by the next day and they were angry. Steve even mixed up the leaves after the fact just to hide as much of the burned leaves as he could, despite the fact that they already had pictures. And he kept repeating, "My dad's a fire marshal. I knew exactly what I was doing." He didn't last much longer after that and continued to claim that it was a little fire under control and that I didn't have to snitch on him in the way that I did. Oh, and as for Phil, he left after 3 more days because he couldn't pay his rent. He only had half and actually tried to win the rest of his rent through scratch-off tickets in the lottery. He then basically took off into the night and we never heard from him ever again. Yeah, that guy's an idiot for burning a bunch of dead leaves next to a dead palm tree. Like, that is so dangerous and it easily could have caused so many problems and so much of a disaster in the area. Like, imagine trying to explain away why you lit everything on fire and why on earth you decided to burn dog waste. Like, seriously, first off, that guy should have been cleaning up after his dog, and secondly, you don't just start burning it up instead of, I don't know, throwing it away into the garbage can. Like, if you're gonna clean it up, at least do it correctly. This guy could have seriously caused a lot of damage and people seriously could have been hurt. He should have had that hose on the ready and there's just no good excuse for what happened. So the next time this guy says his dad's a fire marshal, just look at him and say, "No, you're a liar. You don't know what you're doing and you almost burned down the entire building." An entitled Karen demands to buy the new Super Mario Bros. Game on the PlayStation. But after I describe and explain to her several times that Super Mario Bros. Is not a PlayStation game, she accuses me of stealing all the copies that she would want to buy, insisting that I'm selling them online for double the price, just so she couldn't get the game that she wanted. And I've honestly never been more freaked out by a crazy Karen in my life. Here's what happened. So, with the new Super Mario Bros. Movie opening in theaters soon, I thought I would share this story from when I worked at Walmart back around the mid-2000s. I was filling in at the electronics department, and it was a slow day, and I was standing in the middle of the section waiting for customers to come in so I could try to assist them. And it's right about then that a middle-aged woman walks in, which is the Karen of this story. And when I approached her to ask her how I could help her, that's when everything started to go down. She looks at me and says, "I want to purchase the newest Super Mario Bros. Game." So I said to her, "That's not a problem at all. I can happily help you with that." So I led her to the Nintendo cabinet. I opened it up and I pulled out a copy of the game. The Karen then looks at me and says, "No, not that one." But I responded to her by saying, "Ma'am, this is the newest copy of Super Mario Bros." But the entitled Karen was not having it. She looks at me and says, "No, I want the Super Mario Bros. Game for the PlayStation." And it was right about then that I realized she did not know what she was asking for. I informed her that Mario is a Nintendo licensed property and that it is not sold on PlayStation, but she simply wouldn't believe me. She said to me, "Yes, it is. I saw a commercial advertising it for the PlayStation, and that's what I want to buy." I tried my best once again to tell her that she did not see a commercial advertising Mario for the PlayStation. But of course, this went just about as well as you would expect. She then started shouting at me. She said, "Don't you tell me what I did or didn't see. I know I saw a commercial advertising Mario for the PlayStation, and that's what I want." I then showed her the copyright logo on the game, stating that Mario was a Nintendo licensed company and that there's no way it was on the PlayStation. But she still refused to believe me. So, giving in, I led her to our PlayStation display case and I said to her, "Ma'am, this is our current set of PlayStation games for sale, and you can see that there are no copies of Super Mario Bros. So even if you are right, we just don't carry any copies of that game at our location." Now with this, I was hoping that she would just accept that we didn't sell copies of the game for the PlayStation and would then just hopefully walk away. But instead of doing that, she accused me of stealing all the copies of Mario Bros. For the PlayStation to then sell them online at double the cost so I can make a profit. And when she made that wild accusation against me, I was seriously dumbfounded. I asked her where on earth she was basing this off of, but it was right about then that I realized I was not going to get through to her. So I called over a coworker for assistance. And when he came up, I said to him, "You don't know the conversation I've had with this lady, correct?" He looks at me a little bit confused and then nods his head yes. I turn to this entitled Karen and I say to her, "Listen, there's no way I could have prompted him on what you wanted and are requesting in this department. So with that in mind, please ask my coworker what you want." This This entitled Karen turns to my coworker and tells him that she wanted the newest Super Mario Brothers on the PlayStation. And guess what happened? He tells her the exact same thing that I did, stating that Mario isn't sold on the PlayStation consoles. And of course, she lumps my coworker into the conspiracy, stating that the two of us must be stealing all the copies of the game for PlayStation and selling them online at double the cost. The department manager finally sees the scene that the entitled Karen was making, and he rushes over to try and calm her down, as well as to also tell her that Super Mario Brothers isn't sold on the PlayStation. But she also lumps him in on it as well. But this time, she accuses the department manager of being the ringleader of the operation. She then breaks out the biggest case of crocodile tears I've ever seen in my life. She looks at us and says, "All I wanted to do was buy a copy of Super Mario Brothers for the PlayStation for my son's birthday party, but you monsters have ruined this and countless other children's birthdays by stealing the game from the store just so you could sell them online at double the cost. So because of you, Walmart has lost a valued customer this day. I'm going to another store, I'm gonna find Super Mario Brothers for the PlayStation, and I'm gonna bring it back here and I'm gonna expose you all." And with that, the entitled Karen stormed off. But I couldn't let her get the last word in, so I stepped forward and I shouted back at her. I said, "Ma'am, go ahead and try and find a copy of the game on PlayStation. And if you can, bring it back here and I'll give you my next paycheck." Needless to say, we never saw or heard from that entitled Karen ever again. What an absolutely entitled jerk. This entitled Karen literally went in there, bothered a bunch of hourly workers, and then accused them of having some kind of underground crime ring where they're selling copies of some imaginary game at double the cost. Like, you've got to be seriously unhinged to make that kind of assumption. And this is all built off of the fact that this lady was just completely wrong. I mean, literally 3 separate people who never heard the original conversation in the first place all validated the original poster story and said the exact same thing unprompted. I mean, seriously, what more do you possibly want? So good for the original poster for not only standing up for themselves, but also by handling that with style. Because that entitled Karen was just being a complete moron. And it is seriously disappointing to see someone get treated like this, especially over someone else's absolute ignorance. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My mom wants to come visit me all of a sudden out of nowhere. And now my wife, who has serious problems with my mom, is planning on leaving the house for 2 weeks just so she can avoid this situation. And I seriously don't know what to do. So my wife and I grew up in Latin America, but we've lived in the US for about 10 years. We got married here and we have 2 daughters now. We haven't been able to travel back and visit family for a few years because of the pandemic, having a newborn, and the financial hardship that we were currently in. It would theoretically be possible now in 2023, but my mom surprised me with the news that she had saved enough money to book a trip and come visit us, as well as to meet our granddaughters for the first time. And this news is putting a strain on my marriage. Now, to give some kind of context, my mom and my wife had a decent relationship before we got married. There was always some kind of tension, but not enough to call it conflict. Things started to escalate around 2015 to 2016, when my mom accidentally found out that I'd been in contact with my dad, which is something she had forbidden me to do my entire life. My mom felt betrayed and tremendously upset. She yelled at me on the phone, she cried, and we did not speak to one another for quite a while. Eventually, we decided to put that behind us and continue to stay in touch. But to my wife, getting over those fights has been non-negotiable. The things she brings up, even today, 7 to 8 years later, are basically that my mom implied that she doesn't take care of the home properly or could be taking advantage of me because I have a job and she doesn't. Another episode she keeps bringing back is when my mom asked me and my wife to remove my dad and his son, which is my half-sibling, from our Facebook friends group, which I know, trust me, is very boomer type stuff. But that was the turning point. My wife decided she would not do that and instead blocked and deleted my mom from phone as well as social media and decided to never speak to her again, which has been the case for the last 7 or so years. But with that in mind, my wife always insists on me calling my mom, making sure I'm sending her pictures of the kids, keeping her up to date on their growth. My wife would even insist that I would tell my mom the theme of our daughter's birthday party just so my mom wouldn't complain about not being involved. When my grandfather passed away at the beginning of the pandemic, I video called my mom every single day for like a month. We went through that grief somewhat together. Since then, I've started video calling my mom almost every week. And surprisingly, my wife is the one among all of us who's always on top of making sure that I set aside some time on the weekend to make that call. Even my mom sometimes sometimes goes out to do something on the weekends and gets back home too late, so we can't video chat. But my wife makes sure I never forget it. Now comes early 2023. My mom announces that she's planning to come visit us for the first time, and my wife is now freaking out. She already asked what hotel I'll put her in for the duration of that visit. She told me she doesn't want to see her and doesn't want to be seen or have any conversation with her. Eventually, the tickets were purchased, but it's not yet been decided where my mom is going to stay. Now, here's how I feel about this situation. I wish it wasn't that hard. I wish I could call my mom anytime I wanted and not have to plan ahead, as well as sit in a place where the wife can pass around me without being on camera. I wish I could be 100% excited and happy that my daughters will get to meet their grandma for the first time. But unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm leaning towards agreeing with my wife on leaving for a couple of weeks. It could be nice to have that time away from each other, even if the reasoning for that is not great. I asked her last night, so what are we going to do? Where are you going? And she said to me, I don't know, you tell me. But I said, I can't tell you where to go. I was able to pry from her that her idea of that exile was staying in a hotel room or an Airbnb in our city. It may be relevant to mention that she can't drive, and the transit in our city is not great. So my not ideal, but I can't think of anything else solution, is to pay for a hotel room downtown for the wife and host my mom in my place. I'll also need to work for part of those 2 weeks. So if it comes down to it, I need to have someone watching the kids after school. This is all so confusing and I seriously don't know what to do. So it honestly sounds like your mom has apologized to you and tried to make amends in some kind of way, but it doesn't sound like she's made any attempt to talk to your wife in the slightest. So your wife made the decision of like, you know what, I'm out. I'm not dealing with this. And based on what you've described, I kind of don't blame her. It sounds like your mom is kind of toxic, regardless of if she's apologized to you or not. So it kind of makes sense that your wife would be upset about the whole situation. So in my opinion, the only real solution that I can see is putting your mom in a hotel. It honestly just seems counterintuitive to have your wife leave the house when it's your mom who has caused these problems for so many years. And it's also super suspicious that your mom decided to schedule some kind of visit with you without clearing it with you first. I mean, your mom and wife haven't spoken in 7 years. That is incredibly problematic in my opinion. So hopefully with whatever you decide to do, you really do consider your wife first. Because from the sounds of it, it doesn't look like your mom has made any attempt to try and make amends. And so I really don't think this is the wife's fault in the slightest. My manager tried throwing me under the bus while at work, but as a result, I turned the tables, and right before I resigned and found a new job, I humiliated her in front of the entire company while also permanently damaging her credibility. Here's what happened. So I recently resigned from a toxic workplace as a data analyst at a startup. It was promising at the start, but not long after, I noticed many red flags, including the fact that my manager had absolutely no data analysis or management experience prior to being promoted. I mean, how on earth can you manage anybody if you don't know basic Excel functions? I ignored those red flags and trusted her leadership because I liked the company goals. But little did I know that this would be a horrible decision later on. I basically did all the work for the team for the whole year I was there. When I ran the numbers for reporting and analysis of team performance, she always asked me to dumb it down so that she can present it to high-level management. I thought everything was going well because I only got feedback from her and the rest of the team. About a month ago, a coworker who I don't get along with made a complaint about me that was absolutely untrue. My manager believed it without investigating it, and all of a sudden, I was placed on performance improvement plan. She spouted all types of lies to HR, and when I refuted those claims with written evidence, they doubled down and started gaslighting me, saying stuff like, "Oh, you're just too negative." I refused to sign anything they gave me, and I was threatened with termination, so I had to comply and started building a case against them. I knew she was doing the PIP to terminate me, as she looked for internal candidates to replace me in secret because she was dumb enough to set the meeting up beside me. Once I signed my contract for a new job, I basically did nothing and started working from home. Before my resignation, she asked me to do some reporting for her, so I ran the numbers and sent her the raw data. I told her where the files were located and that she can analyze the data and make the presentation herself. I mean, since she's the data analyst manager, she should know how to do it, right? She tried reporting me for that, but ultimately it backfired because they asked her if the work that I did was actually wrong and was then forced to admit that she didn't know what she was looking at. And because of that, everything else in the team was questioned. And I now believe that they are being audited by an external investigator, which means her credibility was absolutely destroyed. I'm now working for a manager who is competent and has clear goals for the team, but that was one heck of a ride. And while it may be a small win against toxic management, a win is a win. And I will happily take that if it means that she loses her credibility and her place in that company is somehow damaged permanently. What an awful manager. I mean, seriously, if you're going to be in that type of position, then you absolutely need to know what the people underneath you are actively doing. I mean, how on earth can you properly manage anybody if you have no idea what they're doing in the first place? That is seriously just stupid if you ask me. So I really don't blame the original poster for getting back at their boss. Their boss sounds absolutely toxic, and they seriously don't sound like a good person. An entitled Karen's card gets declined at my job, and after trying to offer her so many solutions just so she can get her food, she decides to freak out, lie at me, and curse me up and down, and then send her husband in to yell at me as well. And I've honestly never been more confused in my life. Here's what happened. So I used to work at Panera Bread, and one time a woman came in and ordered something on our kiosk. And the kiosk is basically a little computer screen where people can search what they want to eat and insert their card. The restaurant was empty at this time. She was the only one there, and I asked her a few times if she needed any help with anything, but she said no each time. After a while, she walks up to me and asks where her food is, while also saying that it usually doesn't take this long for just a cup of soup. So I go to the computer in the back and see that there are no new orders. Then, just to make sure, I go to the kitchen and I ask the staff there, and they tell me there hasn't been a new order in a while. Her card has been declined, and that's why she didn't get her food. So I go back and I tell her exactly what happened, and that's right about when she gets absolutely furious with me. So I ask her if when she ordered her food, did the screen say it was approved? She then says to me, no, it didn't say approved, but I know it was charged, which honestly doesn't make any sense. So I said I would be more than happy to ring her up for the soup and that I'll make sure it's top priority in the kitchen. I even offered her a free pastry for the trouble, and instead of being reasonable, she straight up declines it. She then swears at me and storms out of the restaurant. Not even 2 minutes later, her husband comes in and starts to yell at me, stating that the card was not declined. He told me I made his wife feel like garbage and that she was crying in the car because of how I treated her. This man then storms into the kitchen and starts yelling at my coworkers to give him his cup of soup. Now, I didn't know what to do, so I tapped him on his shoulder and I told him he wasn't allowed back there, to which he told me that if I try to hit him, he's gonna call the police. Mind you, he's about 6 feet tall and he's a grown man. While I was maybe, 20 years old at the time, I've always been a pretty small looking girl for my age, so it is hilarious to me that he took the tap on the shoulder as some kind of threat. At this point, the manager notices what's going on. The man was grabbing me by the shoulders and yelling, so my manager had to escort him out of the building. And after that ordeal, my manager allowed me to leave early. And at the end of the day, this was all over a cup of soup that this lady never ordered, and it was something that I was willing to give to them for free and call it my mistake if they had not been complete jerks to me. But this entitled Karen and her husband decided to take the crazy route, and instead of being calm and rational human beings, they decided to act absolutely insane, and that is nobody's fault except their own. Yeah, it really does sound like the entitled Karen of the story was just horribly embarrassed that her card got declined, but instead of fessing up to it and saying, oh, I'll just use another card, or at least going home or taking the free order, she decided to lie and tell her husband that this original poster was being mean to her, but in fact that never happened. And that is so not fair for the original poster in the slightest. And it is seriously jarring that the Karen's husband would storm into the back kitchen demanding a cup of soup for his wife. I mean, if this guy knew exactly how she was acting, he would probably be thinking twice to going back there and acting like that. So hopefully the original poster never has to deal with these people ever again. They're super entitled, they're really weird, and chances are if they try to pay for anything, their card will probably get declined, and the original poster will just find themselves in the same mess all over again. My girlfriend seems absolutely helpless in doing anything with her life, and now I don't know what the long-term vision of our relationship is going to be, and I seriously don't know what to do. So I first want to start off by explaining why I'm with this woman in the first place. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year and a half now. We're both graduate students in different fields at the same university. She is one of the most empathetic people I have ever met. She cares so much for animals and people. She's always trying to be as conscious of her actions as possible. Even from our first date, I've always felt like I can talk to her about anything. She's hardly ever judgmental about anything, and she honestly seems to love hearing me talk about my interests. And I really feel like this goes both ways. We're both also huge nerds, and we could talk for hours without getting bored of each other. Her patience seems to be endless. Even when I'm being a total jerk or making a big deal of something stupid, she is always able to have a rational discussion with me. Whenever we fight, which is extremely rare, we always try to reach an understanding rather than try to win the argument. And in the end, we always mutually apologize and make sure we express affection. In short, it's the most communicative and the most loving relationship I've ever been in, and I admire her so much as a person. The issue at hand, however, is that we seem to be on track for codependency. My girlfriend doesn't drive, and we live in an area where driving is extremely important, so I'm taking her around and giving her rides constantly so she can meet her basic needs. I have expressed concern over this, and she has a history of car-related trauma, so she refuses to learn how to drive. There is no negotiation on this matter, so I simply have to be her caregiver in this regard. My girlfriend has no money on account of being a graduate student and not being able to have a job due to not driving, so I usually just have to pay for everything. My girlfriend also has no friends on the account of having severe social anxiety, while I am constantly making new friends and I'm trying to go out and network with people. In contrast, she struggles to go anywhere in public by herself, and this is all without having a panic attack. I try to bring her to social outings, but she frequently says inappropriate things, and I feel constant anxiety about vicarious embarrassment. She doesn't enjoy these social outings either, so most of the time I don't bring her along. It's not that she's lonely. She seems to thrive in solitude, but being the only person in her life outside of her family that she is constantly calling and texting is honestly exhausting. I just need my own space. I will be panicking or trying to write a midterm paper, and she'll call me like 5 times in a row until I pick up, just to then tell me what her cats did. Or she will have to call me before making any decision just to get my approval or my input. She seriously cannot make any decisions on her own. It's tough to set this boundary because when I try to just let her do her thing, she often makes terrible self-destructive choices that honestly baffle me. I have tried to communicate how this bothers me to her, but doing so makes her feel like a burden, and that makes me feel extremely guilty. She recently started therapy, so I'm hoping these things will improve and she will try to become more autonomous, but she has repeatedly expressed that she isn't interested in driving, working, or making friends. Her plans thus far seems to be to depend on me her whole life, and I'm in a field that makes a lot of money. This worries me because I love her so much and she loves me too, but I often don't feel like her partner. I feel like her surrogate dad. I've repeatedly tried communicating all of this to her, and all it has done is make her feel insecure, but she refuses to do anything for herself all the same. So now I'm at a crossroads. I can either leave this loving but flawed relationship or stay and wait for signs of improvement. What should I do? The way your girlfriend is justifying her actions is incredibly toxic. In my opinion, she is absolutely using you, and she plans on using you for the rest of your life, and at least now you're seeing it early. She could absolutely find another job that's remote, no problem, that works from home. Also, she 100% could make decisions for herself, even if those decisions are self-destructive. And in my opinion, this might be the case of where you just need to step back and let her make her own decisions, even if those are awful decisions in the first place. Like, this is not your fault in the slightest. She is 24 years old, and she needs to step up and be an adult. So hopefully, regardless of what you choose to do in this situation, you're able to find some kind of solution that benefits you. Because at the end of the day, you really will become her caretaker as opposed to her partner. And that, in my opinion, is completely unfair. An entitled Karen pushes down an old lady and runs off with her bag containing thousands of dollars worth of merchandise, as well as the newest gaming console of the time. And as a result, this entitled Karen got arrested and spent over a year in jail. Here's what happened. So about 18 years ago, I worked at the main video game retailer in the United Kingdom. It wasn't a bad job overall, but just like anything where you have to deal with the general public, it came with some pretty horrible moments. This one was early December when the Xbox 360 first came out. Like most console launches, we were running on a pre-order only system. The last stock we received had been reserved by customers with a small deposit. Because the launch was in December, the Xbox was the must-have Christmas gift, and it made people go a little bit insane. I think anyone who has had to deal with pre-orders at retail knows where this is going. Our store opened at 9 o'clock a.m. We couldn't do a midnight launch as the store was within a complex that was locked from 10 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock a.m. each day. The first thing we see once the complex opens is a woman sprinting up to our door and frantically pulling on the handles. We let her know through the doors that we don't open until 9 o'clock a.m. At this point, she's fairly reasonable. console. She says okay and decides to wait. Over the next 15 minutes, a small line forms behind her of people here for their consoles. As you probably expected, she did not have a pre-order. Her response to finding out that she couldn't buy an Xbox was to not only scream at us, but to also threaten that she was going to Trading Standards and she was going to yell about false advertising. And eventually, she started screaming about how she's going to go to our competitor just to buy one from them out of spite, since they apparently have some decency. But what this entitled Karen didn't know was that this console was on pre-order only, and this was happening everywhere. So we knew she wasn't going to have any success over there either. About an hour later, this entitled Karen comes back to the store, and we're all just braced for impact of what she's gonna do. But much to everybody's surprise, she just starts browsing as if nothing happened. We did not realize what she was up to until one of the latecomers comes to pick up their console. As soon as they left the counter and headed for the door, the entitled Karen dashed over to them and started to talk to them. We didn't know what she was doing at first, but it turns out this entitled Karen was offering to buy the console off of the other customer at an elevated price. The woman she spoke to wasn't interested in the slightest. She was an older woman and had one of those wheelie shopping bags that every other older woman in England seems to have. And it was right about then that this entitled Karen really messed up. Not taking no for an answer, she suddenly pushed this older woman, grabbed the bag, and ran. And when she did that, I was honestly shocked, as I seriously never expected anybody to go to this extent just to grab the newest console of the time. When this entitled Karen did this, we were all in shock, but thankfully she didn't get far, because we always had a security guard on watch, especially when it comes to launch days. She got about 20 feet out of the store before they grabbed her and brought her back in. When they called the police, we were all kind of expecting and hoping that she would be arrested for theft, like all the times we had to ring about shoplifters. But that is not what happened. In fact, what happened to her was much, much worse. It turns out that the woman this entitled Karen stole from had done other Christmas shopping that morning. She had bought jewelry, other small electronics, all sorts of things. The goods in her bag totaled to over 2,000 pounds. And because this entitled Karen had pushed her over just to get the bag off of her, it was now officially a robbery, not a theft. And this was robbery for a relatively high value of goods too. It may not sound like a big distinction, but legally it is pretty massive. We were told by the security guard later on, who heard it from the arresting officer, that she was able to get the charge reduced to a theft as long as she pleaded guilty. And as a result, this entitled Karen got 1 year in prison, as well as a period of supervision. So I hope it was worth it for this entitled Karen to spend a year in jail all over the Xbox 360. That entitled Karen was so out of line. Imagine you're in line trying to get this console that you pre-ordered, that you're so excited for, and you finally get your hands on it. And then out of nowhere, you not only have somebody trying to buy it from you at a higher price, but they also try to steal it from you in the process. I mean, how desperate and stupid can someone possibly get? Did this lady really think she would get away with that? I mean, I'm all about getting something new that you really enjoy and that you really want to have for your own. But to straight up steal it in front of all of these witnesses is seriously just the dumbest thing you could have done. So this entitled Karen really did have it coming. And hopefully the next time she goes shopping, she at least learns how to pre-order her stuff, because that is going to be so much better than the 1 year in jail she experienced that could have clearly been avoided if she had simply thought ahead. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. An entitled manager refuses to give me a refund, stating that it's their policy that once you walk out the door, you can no longer get a refund, but must instead get a voucher to buy more stuff. So I decided to maliciously comply, and I got revenge. And I've never been more satisfied with any result in my life. Here's what happened. So this happened in a large store in a European country. When you purchase something from them, and for any reason want to return the item, their policy is that they never give money back, and they only give you a voucher that's redeemable on the same day only. So I went to the store today and I purchased a long list of items. I got home and my wife looks at them and says that we don't need some of them. I end up going back to the store and barely 20 minutes has passed. The returns manager smiles at me as I tell her that I had just purchased these things and would like to return them. She then tells me that I stepped out of the store, so she can't refund me now. She can only give me a voucher and I must buy something else. Now, I had already bought everything I needed. She then tells me to take the products home and keep them for the next time I would need to buy something. Then I can come and get the voucher and redeem it. So just imagine keeping a pair of shoes and a bowl, and remember to bring them with you the next time you happen to need something. I tried to reason, but but she said adamantly, "Those are the rules. You stepped out of the store, you don't get a refund." And that is when it clicked. I asked her, "So if someone wants to return an item without leaving the store, they get the money back?" And when she responded yes, I decided that some malicious compliance was definitely in order. I asked to return the items and get the voucher. I take the voucher, get inside the store, and I find a product with the exact same amount. I think you might know where this is going. I buy the item with the voucher, and right after the cashier, there's the return manager. I go straight from the cashier and I go to her. I hand her the random product that I just bought, and I say to her, "I would like to return this. I don't want it and I never left the store." At this point, she is looking at me with barely any contained rage in her eyes. I kid you not. And the awkward pause we were both experiencing was only getting longer. And then her manager finally comes along. She looks at us and I smile at him, and I say I never left the store and I would like to get a refund for this, please. He nods and motions to the return manager. Silently and not looking at me in the slightest, she proceeds to give me a refund in full. And you know what? If she doesn't like that, then she's just gonna have to deal with it because that's company policy. First off, it's crazy to me that you can't get a refund for items you bought. Like, imagine you bought the wrong thing, or you bought something that you just did not want, and the only thing they can give you is some kind of stupid voucher. I mean, what if you had an awful experience going to that place, and you just wanted to get away and go somewhere else for your product? Or let's just say the product itself was in poor condition, and you didn't want to go to that store again because you didn't want to have another product that just didn't work. That would make the voucher policy unbelievably frustrating, and seriously not worth your time. But you know what? It looks like the original poster found a loophole that this store clearly did not account for. I don't think I've ever heard of any store giving out money back from a voucher, but you better believe they probably changed that policy after that day. So it's really cool to see that the original poster got their money back, because that policy in and of itself is incredibly dumb, and it truly is unfair to make someone buy more items from a store that you didn't mean to buy things from in the first place. Today, I messed up by accidentally showing my employer an email confirming my new job, despite the fact that I have not given them notice yet, and now I'm so paranoid that they're all going to be treating me different, and now I seriously don't know what to do. So this morning, I accepted a job offer. It was a difficult decision because I enjoy my current job and I love my coworkers, but the new position is a better fit with the kind of work I want to be doing. I got an email from the recruiter this afternoon confirming my acceptance. Because I haven't signed a contract yet, I also haven't given my current employer my notice, and it's been a bit uncomfortable being at the office acting normal when I know I will be dropping this on them pretty soon. We are a small company, and I'm in a close-knit team of only 4 people. All of us are good at our jobs, and we are quite busy. My leaving will be unexpected and not great for the team, and I really do feel bad about it. Unfortunately for me, I now have an even better reason to feel bad. So this afternoon, I was in a meeting with my team, including my team lead and our manager, who is also the CEO and whom we all get along well with. We were brainstorming some design solutions, and my coworker mentioned that there's a feature in Gmail that was similar to what we wanted to achieve. I was already sharing my screen, so I logged into my personal email account without thinking about it first, and this is where I messed up. At the top were 2 unread emails, but below that in the read section, the email was the top one, with the subject job offer and the preview saying, "Thank you for accepting our offer. We're glad you want to join our company." I didn't realize until about 5 to 10 seconds in, when I immediately opened a new tab and tried to play it off. I am absolutely mortified. No one let on that they saw it, but if they did, and I think that's not unlikely, the email preview left absolutely zero doubt about what was going on. Now I'm really just hoping that my new employer will send me the contract tomorrow so I can sign it as soon as possible and give my notice first thing Monday morning, as well as apologizing profusely in case my boss saw it. I really do not want them to find out like this. In the meantime, I'm trying to laugh about this, otherwise I think I might cry. So hopefully you can at least be amused by my misery. Yeah, that's one of those miscalculations that you really just don't expect. You're already really excited about this job, and you're just trying to play it off until you get the contract in hand. And then you quite literally spill the beans all over the place and show your entire team that, yep, I'm gonna be leaving. That is a really rough way to find out, and honestly, I don't blame you for feeling embarrassed. But also, I think it's good to remember that people quit their jobs all the time. Like, it's not unusual for people to put their 2 weeks notice in and go somewhere else. And there could be any number of reasons why you're deciding to move forward, so I don't think you should be beating yourself up in the slightest. This is honestly just a part of life, and I think if you explain it properly, if someone really does have a problem with it, then they can hopefully understand that, you know what, you have to do what's right for you. And if that means you gotta leave this company, well then so be it. An entitled father freaks out in a doctor's office after he had to wait 3 hours just to be seen. And in the process, he threw one of the biggest temper tantrums I've ever seen a grown adult throw in my life. Here's what happened. So back when I was in high school as a freshman, my mom and I went to the doctor's office to discuss how to treat my recently diagnosed acid reflux. And my mom and I were actually in the office waiting for the doctor to come in and talk to us, and everything was going well. That is until we heard the sound of raised voices. Being the nosy people that we were, we decided to step up and listen. It was a disgruntled father who was berating a nurse about how he and his daughter had been waiting to be seen for 3 hours. Now, if he did have an appointment, the anger would be understandable, but apparently his poor daughter had gotten sick at school, and the father had taken his daughter to be seen that day with no prior appointment. I get being frustrated, but there isn't much the nurse can do. Doctors' offices are busy, and if you don't have an appointment, you're gonna have to be waiting there for a while. This father was yelling at the nurse, repeating the words over and over again that they've been waiting for 3 hours. He also said, "I should not even be billed for this visit." The nurse tried to talk to the girl and asked her if she wanted some cookies, to which the poor girl tearfully said that she wanted to go home. And this was during the entire thing. My mom and I were looking at each other with wide eyes. At one point, the father even loudly said, "This is absolutely ridiculous." Eventually, the doctor came up to de-escalate the situation. The father seemed to calm down just a little bit and told them that his priority is just to get his daughter treated and then taken home. After that, everything calmed down. I got my appointment done and then I took my leave. Now that was back in 2017, and I still remember it vividly. That was one of the worst temper tantrums I've ever seen, and it came from a fully grown adult with a kid. My father works in pediatrics, and even he hasn't seen such childish behavior. Now don't get me wrong, I get that he was likely very stressed out due to the situation, but that doesn't mean that he gets to be verbally aggressive to a nurse who can't really do much. If I was the doctor and I saw that man being like that towards the nurse, he would have been asked to leave the office. Honestly, the person I feel the worst for is the daughter. She had just gotten sick and had to wait 3 hours to be seen, and then had to witness her father go into a massive temper tantrum, all because he didn't get his way. Well, to the dad, I'm fairly certain that your sick daughter is suffering more than you are, so maybe just a little bit of patience would really go a long way. The way that father was acting was completely out of line. To freak out like that on a nurse who has literally nothing to do with the schedule and cannot control when and where someone is seen is seriously inappropriate. But at the same time, I would have gone up to the front desk after an hour and said, "Hey, can you please fit my daughter in?" I would not have waited until 3 hours later just to try and get something going. Like, that's not fair for your daughter, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. And I'm right there with the original poster. I can completely understand that they're stressed out because their kid is sick. Like, I get it. But the way you're acting is only making it worse. The least you can do is at least be calm and try and be somewhat reasonable. And I also agree with the original poster as well. If I was the doctor in that situation, I absolutely would have asked him to leave. You're not going to talk to people like that and expect any kind of service. And you know what? He can either wait in this doctor's office or go to the emergency room and wait 3 more hours to be seen. So in my opinion, I would rather wait those 3 hours and ensure that I'm seen in a relatively quick fashion instead of having to wait for several more hours in the emergency room for something that could be easily treated. An entitled customer gets angry at me after they order the wrong item on the menu. Here's what happened. So I work at a small local sushi restaurant as a waiter, and tonight I had one of those moments where I was unfairly blamed by a customer who ordered the wrong sushi. She came in, took around 10 minutes to decide on her order, and then says she wants the fresh tuna and the avocado medium roll, and she wants this all as takeaway. As fresh tuna is fairly uncommon from customers around our area, I checked with her twice, and both times she replied yes, even giving me an eye roll when I was confirming it for the second time. Anyways, she comes back with her little son later to pick up the order, and I read the items again before handing over her rolls following her confirmation. All was well until about 30 minutes later when she comes back saying she never ordered fresh tuna and that she ordered cooked tuna, saying her son doesn't eat raw fish. Now, since I was the one who confirmed it to her 3 different times, I told her, "Ma'am, with all due respect, I remember quite clearly how you said you want fresh tuna and not cooked tuna. I even checked with you 3 times, twice when you were ordering and once before you left." Before I could even finish my sentence, she starts going off on me. She says, "No, I order cooked. I would never order fresh. Are you talking back to me? Do you want an argument? Are you really about to lose a customer for this ridiculous reason?" When she said this, I was just lost for words, as I was actually planning on offering her a free replacement roll with cooked tuna, especially especially since this was for her little son. Anyways, after listening to her rant, I say to her, "Ma'am, I am more than happy to replace the role for you. I was just pointing out that I checked with you 3 different times, and all of it with your confirmation." She then looks at me and says, "Well, are you trying to point the blame at me? That is unacceptable behavior, and you should never treat your customer that way." And right after she said that, she got up, took her son, and left. And while that encounter did basically ruin my day's mood, there was one table of 2 ladies dining in while that was happening. And when the takeaway lady left, they both turned to me and said, "It's not your fault. She is just an entitled jerk." Yeah, the customer in that situation is so unbelievably out of line. You confirmed with them 3 different times, "Is this what you want?" Like, you literally made sure and went out of your way to try and figure out if this is really what they were ordering. And they said yes every single time. So the original poster is absolutely not at fault. They didn't do anything wrong, and if anything, they did their job really well. They confirmed this order and tried to give the best customer service they possibly could, especially when you consider that this entitled Karen was just being unreasonable, and there literally was no reason for them to act like that in the slightest. My boyfriend, who I've been dating, went missing in action for 3 nights in a row, all while he was on a business trip. And at this point, I'm furious, and I seriously don't know what to do. So I first want to say that my boyfriend is a surgeon, and he's on a mission trip to a 3rd world country, and I'm aware that he's very busy, but I made it clear to him that it is important to me for him to check in once before bed every night with a text message. I get a lot of anxiety, and I am already on edge with this guy. Previously, I've caught him on dating apps, even though he said he wasn't using them. I forgave him and then later found out he was actually flirting and talking around with other women on there. Anyways, for 3 nights in a row, he is completely unreachable while on the mission trip. On one of those nights, he told me that he was at a celebration at the organizer's house. He told me this the next morning, so that means that the entire night he was partying and ignoring my calls and text messages. He checked in quickly a few hours ago, which would be about 7:00 p.m. his time, and he said to me, "Sorry for not communicating enough, I'll bring you back a nice gift." I then asked him what he's doing the rest of the night, and he just left me on read. It is now 12 o'clock at night, and I can see that he's still up because he's online. And at that point, I just exploded. I sent a flurry of text messages, basically telling him that this is the scummiest thing that any guy has ever treated me, and that I've never had enough and that I can't take it anymore. At one point, he said he's working 18-hour shifts. I just don't know if I fully believe that though. And even if it is true, why is it so hard to send a quick text message before bed? I mean, everyone has to pop a piece of food in their mouth and brush their teeth before they lay down. Why not send a quick goodnight text? Do you think I'm overreacting about him being unreachable for 3 nights in a row on a business trip? I honestly just don't know. I just don't feel good of not knowing for 3 nights in a row where he is, as well as him just being unreachable altogether. I don't know if he's going to end up blocking me at this point because of all the messages that I've sent, but I'm basically at the point where I may just block him myself. This behavior is honestly so unacceptable, and I seriously don't know what to do. It really does seem kind of suspicious that your boyfriend, who has already previously been on dating apps, suddenly just goes missing in action for 3 days, and then doesn't respond in some kind of orderly fashion or in some kind of way to give you some kind of peace of mind. Like, seriously, that's not fair for you in the slightest. But in that same vein of thought, I don't think it would be right to go out of your way and make some kind of wild assumption about his actions without some kind of concrete evidence. That, in my opinion, would be really a bad thing to do, and it's just not going to be worth it. Because what if you're wrong? What if you make these horrible accusations and then suddenly he doesn't feel the same way about you? So hopefully he really was just unreachable in this foreign country, and he wasn't doing anything nefarious, because that would honestly be disastrous towards your relationship, and you truly would not deserve that. My entitled husband claims that he's not cheating on me, despite the fact that he goes partying with a bunch of women every night after work. And even though I beg him to stop going to these girls' bars after work, he claims that he doesn't want to be held back by anyone in his life, not even his own wife. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, my husband and I migrated to Japan and have settled here. Our child attends school and already has an established support system for his special needs. My husband works full-time and I work part-time while the kid is in school. Everything works out well and we are quite happy. The work culture here is very stressful. As my husband progresses in his career, the more stressful his job becomes. I understand that, as even my part-time job is quite demanding. So people here would go out downtown with their coworkers and drink themselves into oblivion. I rarely attend these sorts of things, but my husband loves it. So here's the thing. Around 5 years ago, my husband went out again with his coworkers and was dumped in front of our door by his best friend at around 4:30 in the morning. He was so drunk, he was just lying there in the front puking. In fact, him puking was the sound that I woke up to. While I was taking care of him, I saw some text messages coming in from his phone from some girl asking if he got home okay. Upon further inspection, it was from a girl working in a girls' bar. Being a naive introvert, I don't really know what happens in places like this, so I googled it, and it's your typical girls' bar, where men pay to flirt and drink with young girls in scandalous outfits. Whether or not there would be anything more than that, I guess depends on the girl. This broke my heart. It was our kid's birthday, so I had to get the kid out and celebrate by ourselves, since my husband could barely stand up. I confronted him, and he admitted that he's been going to these clubs about 4 to 5 times now, but he insisted that there was nothing going on and that it wasn't allowed for the men to touch the girls in any kind of way. He wasn't in any other type of relationship with another girl, so he doesn't think that he's cheating or doing anything bad. He does admit that he's taking it too far by being in contact with the bar girls, but still insists that nothing more is happening than that. I told him this thing hurts me so much, and I don't want him going to these kind of bars anymore. But guess what happened when I said that? He continued doing it. I actually did not try to catch him or anything like that, but every time he goes out, I felt triggered with anxiety and distress, and it would often lead to a fight. To be honest, this is the only thing that we fight about. He thinks I'm suffocating him and not allowing him to go party and relieve stress, which he feels is unfair. He says that he will never allow anyone to jail him. There was even this instance where we went camping with some friends that we just met. While drinking, he decided to tell everyone how I was crazy and I was smothering him because I would always start a huge fight whenever he goes out to party. And when he did this, I felt so embarrassed because I barely knew the people that were there, and he was airing out our dirty laundry for whatever reason. Last year, we were scheduled to go back to our home country for the holidays. My husband went to go party again as an end of the year company celebration, and when he came back, he was sick, and as a result, I got sick and our kid got sick. Our kid's fever was so high, I was considering taking him to the hospital. We were able to get through it, but then a friend of mine told me something. They said they saw my husband going into a girls' club. I checked around and I was able to confirm that he did it again. I'm so livid that not only is he still doing what I've begged him to stop doing, but also his actions have led to our kid getting sick. But the kid was looking forward to our family vacation, so even though I felt so broken and betrayed, I decided to suck it all up and forgive my husband for now. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'll try to be better and we can work this out during vacation. But you know what? We didn't do that. My husband decided to party even harder, drinking every single night. He would do whatever he pleased, and I would be just behind him picking up after him. I am so tired of this, and I've been thinking, maybe my kid and I would be better off without him. I feel myself checking out of this marriage. Then he decided he's gonna go out and party again, and I just snapped. I got so angry at him. I was so distressed I felt my heart was gonna burst, but he screamed back at me that I was crazy and that he wasn't doing anything wrong, that he will never allow anyone to limit him or jail him, and then he left. I couldn't believe this person I've entrusted my life to, that I've been nothing but loyal and dedicated to, would be alright causing me this much distress and pain, just so he could try and prove a point in his life, or just because he wants to party. I am so done. I haven't spoken to him for a week now, and I put all his stuff in the spare bedroom, and the kid and I are now staying in my bedroom. I have gone and went for a job interview, and I guess I'm gearing up to leave my husband because I can't take it anymore. But to be honest, there's a part of me that doesn't want to go. I'm planning on sitting down and talking with him later now that I'm calmer. However, I still don't know if my feelings are valid or if this is something to throw away 11 years of our lives together. I am so uncertain on how I feel, but I do know I feel so hurt and betrayed. What should I do? First off, your feelings are absolutely valid. And secondly, your husband is a piece of garbage. And yeah, he's saying that he's not doing anything with these girls, but you know what? This is how it starts. You go, you get drunk, and then who knows what happens. I mean, he showed up at your doorstep at 4:30 in the morning, completely drunk out of his mind, puking his guts out. He literally goes to these bars because he likes that more than he appreciates the emotional well-being of his wife. And you seriously do not deserve this type of treatment. Him saying that he doesn't want to be limited or jailed or anything like that is the most contradictory statement I've ever heard in my life. Because this guy agreed to marry you. Like literally, he signed up to be jailed. He quite literally signed up to be exclusively with you. That's the point of being married. And if he seriously can't respect your boundaries, and if he really wants to go out to these girls' bars, well then congratulations, you're gonna lose everything else in your life. And I seriously don't blame you either for getting ready to move on. He does not sound like a good husband, and he sounds like an awful person to live with. So hopefully with whatever you decide to do, I hope it all works out for you. Because honestly, your husband is absolutely in the wrong, and you do not deserve to live like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My fiance is saying that he no longer is sure if he wants to marry me, and now I feel absolutely devastated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been with my partner for about 6 years. He recently proposed, but what I thought would be a happy milestone for our relationship has turned into the worst our relationship has ever been, and now I'm not even sure if we'll get married. Basically, I was in a bad place shortly after the engagement. Lots of anxiety and stress around work, as well as some health matters, and we rarely saw or talked to each other because of a business trip that he went to. To be completely honest, I was being a bit of a jerk, and I was being snappy towards him for the past couple of weeks. After a big fight recently, my fiance told me he was not 100% sure that he should get married to me. He said that he still loved me and had no doubts as to whether he could handle me or not when I get bouts of mental health problems and spiral because of his life, which is already busy and high stress. He also said that he could see the possibility of him cheating on me emotionally if we got married, especially if I continue to be this way, which is negative, grumpy, and snappy. Now, this is the first time he's ever said anything like this to me. In the past 6 years that we've been together, I've never heard this. He has always been so sure of me and us. Even from the first year that we started dating, he used to say he was 100% sure I was the one, and now he only says that he hopes so, simply because we've been together for so long. We'd been doing better the last couple of days, and I thought we were back to being semi-normal, but when I brought it up, he told me that he had the same stance and doubts. We also only see each other on the weekends, and he's scheduled to play weekly basketball games on Saturday afternoons, which is fine, but that already eats up the limited time that we have for each other at a time where we're not doing so well. Now it makes me think, is it just me, or is he already distancing himself from me? He also just seems more distant and less sweet. It's awkward because we've become super close to each other's families, and they keep bringing up wedding plans, and I haven't told anyone that we're having problems. Should I try to fight for this relationship? This is probably the biggest fight we've ever had. We've never had any other major problems in the past 6 years. What should I do? I think you two seriously need to talk and work something out between the two of you. I mean, this is a serious commitment, and this is something that both of you have to be on board for. Otherwise, I just see this falling apart at the seams, and it seems like that's already starting to happen. So either talking one-on-one and making the time to seriously work out what's going on, or even just going to like a marriage counselor of some kind who might be able to help you work through what's going on would be a really good thing for you guys right now. Because let's look at the facts. Would you rather have a marriage that you know is secure and steady with someone that you love who absolutely wants to be married with you? Or would you rather be married to someone who very likely would just emotionally cheat on you right after you get married to him? And that's all because you're grumpy and a little snappy. And that's not to say that you can't work on that on your end. Obviously, I think you're aware of how you've been acting, and I think you can make some kind of steps to fixing that in the long run. Obviously, it's not a long-term trait, but it's just something that's recently been going on that obviously you need to fix. And in fact, maybe double back to what he said. He would emotionally cheat on you if you continue to act this way. Like, that's a massive red flag in my opinion. But either way, with whatever you decide to do, some kind of talk and discussion needs to be made. Because in my opinion, if the timing is not right to get married, then you absolutely should not force that. That would be a nightmare to deal with, and I honestly think, in my opinion, that you would make your situation a lot worse by trying to force both of you into a marriage that both of you are clearly not ready for. My husband constantly sleeps through his alarms, and he oversleeps all the time, and at this point, I'm at my wit's end and I seriously don't know what to do. So my husband and I have been together for 3.5 years. Our 1-year anniversary is coming up on April 2nd. My husband is a paramedic, and he does shift work, which can be exhausting. Ever since we started dating, I've had to take on the responsibility of making sure he doesn't sleep through his alarms, so he isn't late for work. He never asked me to do this, but if I don't, he consistently oversleeps and is late. To be clear, I really don't think that this is an irresponsibility thing on his part. It seems like there is something something else behind it. He sets an obscenely loud alarm that he has to hold up to a light for him to turn off. That thing, no exaggeration, is as loud as a tornado siren, and I still have to wake him up just to turn it off. He used to have one called a doomsday alarm that his dad could hear from the outside barn of our house, and my husband still slept through it. He does have sleep apnea, and he does wear a CPAP. Every morning, even if I'm off, I set alarms so I can make sure he gets up. But this morning, he turned his phone off after I kept trying to get him up. We both fell back asleep, and he overslept and was late. And while he was trying to leave, he said to me, "That's what I get for turning off my phone." And I responded by saying, "Why on earth did you turn it off?" He said to me, "Because someone was complaining at me about turning it off." At this point, I am so upset, and I don't know what to do. I am not his mother, and I feel like I shouldn't be responsible for this. But he won't seek treatment for what obviously seems like a sleep disorder. What should I do? Honestly, it sounds like your husband's being super entitled. Like he already has this crazy loud alarm, and he doesn't even take the time to get up and get out of bed and do his job. And I think I really do want to disagree with the original poster here. This absolutely is a responsibility problem. He is not being responsible and taking care of the alarm right when it goes off, but instead he's basically relying on you to get him out of bed. And that, in my opinion, is completely unreasonable, especially considering when you have days off, you probably want to sleep in, but he's making your life miserable by basically having a car alarm right next to your head every morning and still not having the common courtesy to get up and turn it off. But in that same vein of thought, there's probably something going on with his sleep patterns, and he probably does have some undiagnosed sleeping disorder. So maybe having some kind of discussion with him and saying, "Hey, we need to figure this out," and trying to approach this rationally and calmly might do a lot of good. And if that doesn't work, then you can take the petty route of basically saying, "Okay, I just won't wake you up anymore." Let that alarm ring, take a step out of the bedroom, and go sleep on the couch or something. Anything to make him realize, oh, this is something I need to take care of. And honestly, you have every right to complain about that stupid alarm. It's his responsibility to turn it off because it's something he uses to get up in the morning. So hopefully you can get this figured out, because that sounds absolutely obnoxious, and if I was in your shoes, I would also be miserable and really wanting him to find a solution. Today, I messed up by introducing my boyfriend to an old friend who's notorious for ruining my friendships and tried to steal my boyfriends away from me. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So, for a bit of context, my old friend, who I will dub Valerie, that's not her real name, had a serious habit of following through my friends list on social media and talking to people that I had previously mentioned in conversation to her. Often it was boys I was interested in or close friends. She would message them and say that I recommended that they be friends. And out of the 6 times that she did this, 4 of them ended up ghosting me. I have no idea what Valerie would say, but I am pretty sure it wasn't true. Also, if you haven't guessed already, Valerie is just kind of an awful person overall. And eventually, I stopped talking to her for obvious reasons back in 2021, after we had been friends for a year already. Now, right around the time I stopped talking to Valerie, I met a very nice boy by the name of Evan. That's also not his real name. He has been so good to me, and I feel so lucky to have him in my life. I opened up to him months ago about how Valerie made me feel, and I told him all the awful things that she did, including but not limited to her stealing away my friends and people I had interest in. He agreed that it was awful and I had every right to be upset. Well, a few months ago, Valerie reached out to tell me that she had changed. I was hesitant, but gave her another chance. We became a lot closer very quickly, and I really did believe that she had changed. I started to tell her about Evan and how happy he had made me. I even opened up about how I sometimes get very jealous when people are flirty with him, despite him being very loyal, and that was a massive mistake. A week later, Valerie asked to befriend Evan, saying that she's heard a lot about him and how she wants to be involved in my life. Valerie had a history of saying or doing things that she knew would tick me off to make it look as though I was getting upset over nothing to the people I liked. It would result to them liking me less, thinking that I am being dramatic. I was wary, but felt bad for holding the past against her, and I introduced them to each other. They got along great, despite Evan previously saying Valerie seemed annoying and he wouldn't like her at all. Within days, she sent a random picture to the group chat of her with her pants down very low. I expected Evan to say something, as he's always been very forward with girls who show interest with him, but he didn't say anything. She then sent a similar picture the next day, and he still didn't say anything. I questioned him about it, and he said it was nothing, and there wasn't any reason for me to be upset. And when he said that, I felt kind of bad, and so I just dropped it. I got a sinking gut feeling that Valerie was doing what she did before, making me look as though I'm getting mad over nothing after I disclosed to her my jealousy. Afterwards, I explained to Evan that I was only upset because it reminded me of how Valerie used to be, how she was making me look bad in front of him on purpose, and it worked. He said he was wrong in thinking it was stupid to be upset about that, and he didn't want to talk to her anymore, knowing what she was doing. Less than a week later, he out of nowhere told me he thinks Valerie is funny. I thought that was a weird thing to say, considering he told me he wasn't speaking to her anymore, and I hadn't seen any new messages in the group chat. I didn't get upset with him, but I feel like I did seem pretty dejected. He then told me that it was a stupid reason to be jealous, and we had a small argument. I told him that I felt as if he took nothing I said in terms of how she made me feel into account, and he again told me that he was sorry and it wouldn't happen again. Now, over a month later, he told me again that Valerie is very funny and invited her to play video games with us. I didn't even know they were still in contact. I feel like I'm losing him to her like the rest of the people she talks to, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. First off, I want to say that the original poster is incredibly foolish. If they seriously thought they could let Valerie back into their life, and Valerie wouldn't try and ruin it just like they did before. Like, really, what were you thinking? You need to remember why you stopped being friends with this lady in the first place. And the excuse of them saying, oh, I've changed, I'm a different person, probably doesn't hold that much weight, to be completely honest. Like, sure, some people deserve second chances, but malicious people like this absolutely do not. You cut them out and you move on with your life. Because to Valerie, this is a game. This is her way of playing with your emotions and essentially playing with your boyfriend. And honestly, if by the end of this, Valerie steals your boyfriend away from you, then let that be an obvious sign that he was not worth trying to keep in the first place. So I really think you need to have some kind of serious conversation with Evan and say to him that you really do not want this lady back in your life, and make the steps to cut her off once again. You don't have to feel guilty about dropping toxic people, as well as people who just want to create drama in your friend group. In my opinion, you won't regret dropping that lady for good, and the peace you obtain will be so valuable, it will be worth the effort of just saying, hey, we're done. So hopefully you can break through to Evan and help him see what's actually happening, because based on the way things are going, it's not looking good. But hopefully for the sake of your relationship, he sees reason and sees exactly what Valerie's trying to do. I found out that my boyfriend has still been in contact with his ex-girlfriend, and now while he's away on vacation, I'm going to be moving out his belongings into a storage unit, and I'm going to be breaking up with him on the spot. And I'm honestly so stressed out and I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 7 years. He moved across the country 6 years ago to be with me, but it is honestly not working. He was in love with someone else when we first got together. I only found out about it when I found some letters that he had written to her in a notebook that he left out on a table. I was looking for a piece of paper, and instead I found these letters. He is still in contact with her, even though he has promised repeatedly to cut her off. So I need to end it. I cannot trust him. He says he doesn't have feelings for her anymore, but I don't believe him, because he has gone to such great lengths to hide the fact that they are still in contact with one another. The problem is, how do we break it off? We have tried to break up in the past, but he can't just leave the house immediately because he lives across the country. He can't afford a hotel until he's ready to go. So we have a fight, we agree that he should leave, but then we just end up back together because he is still in the house as he tries to arrange a cross-country move. He begs me to not break up with him and to keep trying. We have been through this several times, and I always find out that he is still in touch with her. He is going to see his family in a few weeks, and I am considering moving his stuff out and just telling him to come back for it when he can. As far as I'm concerned, he can come back here with someone to help him move. That way, there's no deciding to try one more time, simply because he is here and crying and asking me to take him back. It is over and done with, and we just can't be with each other anymore. I am so miserable now because of this, and I seriously don't know what to do. Your boyfriend absolutely sucks. The fact that he's still in contact with his ex-girlfriend and is actively sending her messages is unbelievably toxic. Like, that is so uncalled for. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would be doing the exact same thing. There is no way I would let that guy back into my home, especially after finding out this information. You deserve so much better than this, and he seriously needs to get out and move on. And I think the plan you've got set up is honestly a good one. Move it out while he's away and put it in storage, and then hopefully you can just move on with your life without him being involved, because from the sounds of it, he is just stringing you along. And if he really wants to be around his ex-girlfriend so much, then so be it. Let him do it. And who knows, he probably is going going across the country just to get with her anyways. So overall, if you do go through with your plan, I think you're going to be a lot happier as a result, because you do not need this kind of energy in your life in the slightest. An entitled Karen demands to cut first into the line to a restaurant, claiming that because she has kids, no one else in the line matters in the slightest, and that she should have priority to get into the restaurant and get out of the rain. And I've never been more offended by somebody's behavior in my life. Here's what happened. So this story happened a few months ago, and it honestly still blows my mind. So my sister and I, both of us being 20 years old, were traveling together to this small touristic town in the southern region of our country. One night we wanted to go to a restaurant, and we didn't know how popular it was, and it was kind of crowded when we arrived, so there was a line to get in. There were maybe 8 people or families in front of us, so we decided to wait anyways because we had some time. It was raining, and the line wasn't exactly inside the restaurant, but it was in a covered area, so it wasn't raining on us or anyone else in the line. Maybe 30 minutes passed by, and there were 2 people in front of us, and maybe 3 or 4 behind, and it was right about then that the entitled couple arrives right in front of us. The husband is holding a toddler, and there's a little boy following behind them. They stop, look at the line, look at each other, and the wife picks up the toddler and immediately goes up to the lady in charge of the line, demanding that she lets them in. The lady asks if they have a reservation, and she says no. She then tries to explain that without a reservation, they can't cut in line for obvious reasons. But this definitely was the wrong thing to say, because this entitled Karen then starts to go off on her. The wife starts to go, "Don't you see I have a baby with me?" And she said this while holding the baby up in front of this lady. Me and my sister were watching all of it, and we saw the husband pushing the little boy so he would stand next to his mother, all for the show. Then she goes on and says, "I have 2 kids with me, so you better let us in. There's no other families with children here. They can certainly wait." The lady very patiently repeats what she had said before, but this doesn't sway this entitled Karen in the slightest. Ignoring everybody else in line, this entitled Karen says, "It is raining on us. My kids are gonna get sick. If my kids get sick, it's gonna be your fault. So you have to get a table for us right now and let us in." Then, almost on cue, she called for her husband, and he started repeating the same things that she was saying, talking about how they have 2 kids with them, it's raining outside, and they don't want their kids to get sick. They also said that they had the right to cut in line because they had kids with them, and that kids should be prioritized over the adults in the line to the restaurant, claiming that his kids were starving and they needed something to eat. This went on for a while, but thankfully and eventually, they both left. And as they were leaving, they were complaining and cursing the lady who was just trying to do her job. Now, I don't blame the kids for the parents' behavior, but it wasn't a nice scene to watch in the slightest, and it definitely was an awful example for them to set. Eventually, we were able to get in and have some food, and it was really good. So truth be told, at least our night wasn't ruined, and at least we didn't have to deal with an entitled Karen cutting in line all because they didn't want to wait. That is honestly super ridiculous. The fact that she would wave her kids around and basically be like, "Whoa, look, children here, I gotta go first." Like, what does this lady think? Is this the Titanic suddenly? Do women and children need to get into the restaurant first before the boat sinks? Like, come on. And the way they walked up, it kind of screams to me that they've done this before. Like, they both knew exactly what to say just to try and guilt trip their way into the head of this line. And that is so inappropriate in my opinion. To parade your children around like that as some kind of bargaining chip, as if there isn't already a dozen people standing in line trying to get into the same restaurant. Like, come on, get over yourself. So thankfully, the person at the front didn't take that and didn't cave to their weird demands. Because at the end of the day, if you choose to be a parent, then that's on you. And the rest of the world does not have to cater to you, especially if you're just going to use those kids to try and get your way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My entitled grandmother ruins my graduation party by taking back my laptop she gifted to me before the graduation party, all because I didn't show it off and let people know that she bought me this in the first place. And it was so embarrassing and it ruined the mood, and I'm still upset about it to this day. Here's what happened. So this happened when I was 18 years old. My dream was to go on a Hawaiian vacation. I love the culture, I love the music, and I have a dream of trying to surf. My grandparents had a timeshare there. We live in Minnesota, and my grandmother asked me what I wanted for graduation. So I told her I'd really like to go to Hawaii. They usually went every winter, so she had agreed. Fast forward to January when they usually went, and my grandmother said my back is really bad. I don't think I can handle doing doing that. And so I was like, okay. She asked, I have this laptop that isn't that old, and with your grandpa and I not traveling anymore, it doesn't get used. What if we gave you the laptop for graduation instead? You can take it now. The only thing I ask is that you put it on the gift table with my name on it, stating that I gave it to you. My grandmother had a very entitled way of demanding attention to herself, by the way. So I just agreed, and I figured it wasn't a big deal for a gift that was essentially a $1,000 laptop. My grandma always bought the best. Well, the graduation party came, and I brought the computer out for Dad to put on the table. But my dad said, no son, we don't want someone to knock it off. There will be too many kids and too many people. And I said, well, what about Grandma? He said, don't worry, your mom and I will handle it. This is your day. Well, eventually Grandma saw it wasn't up there, so she pulled me away from the guests. She said, I want to talk to you right now. So I walked away from my company and asked her what was wrong. She promptly got all up in my face, growling and grumbling at how I was so disrespectful and rude, and how I was the most disrespectful grandchild ever. I said, hang on, if it means that much to you, I can go get it and set it up. So I quickly went into the house to go and get it. Besides, my dad was the one who said that I shouldn't set it up. As she follows me into the house, I grabbed the laptop, and that's when she said, it's too late for that. I'm taking it back. You don't deserve this. When she said this, I felt so upset. I promptly ran across the yard. My mom called after me asking what was wrong. I hollered back and I said, ask that spiteful woman you call a mom. Shortly after, a cousin came to find me walking in the neighborhood. She convinced me to come on back, and after calming down, I went back to visiting with my guests. During a lull in activity, I went back to see if the laptop was around, and guess what? It was gone. The funny part is that she didn't even take the charger, so it would not have done her much good. I just felt terrible. I came out bawling. Now my grandmother on my dad's side saw her take the laptop out of the house, and she said that she didn't think anything of it. She didn't know about the events prior. Everyone tried to console me. My dad especially was livid. Meanwhile, my grandpa, the entitled grandma's husband, was out in the yard. He was so embarrassed and angry at her, he couldn't even look at me. My mom said, you need to talk to him, and I demanded to know why. I thought that maybe he was in on it as well. My mom said, no son, he's hurt just like you are. He told me he's so embarrassed he can't even look at you. He knows what that laptop meant to you. So I eventually go up to him, and my grandpa said that he was so sorry. He said, you're getting that back. Either she gives it back or I'll take it myself and get a new one. No cost spared. Everyone else at the party was so nice. My dad's parents even offered to buy me a new one. They were very poor and I knew this, so for them to offer meant a lot to me. Later, my dad and I saw a police car, so we flagged him down and we discussed our options. My grandfather had politely asked to handle this in the family, so my dad told the officer that grandpa had 1 week to give it back, or we would file theft charges. She did eventually give it back though, but I never did get super close with her ever again. My grandpa was so angry with her. He said that no one has the right to take back a gift like that, especially when she knew what it meant to you. This hit especially hard because I'm a music connoisseur, so I had my entire music library pictures, easily several gigs worth. Now, I know I sound like the entitled one to some people, but I don't make a habit out of asking for expensive things. But regardless, I'm just happy to have the laptop back, especially after spending so much time setting it up and putting so many things on it. It really would have been a shame to lose it forever, all because of my grandma's entitlement. Yeah, that sounds like an absolute mess. So she gives you the computer before the party, and then she only wants you to set it up for people to see, just so they can know that grandma gave you this expensive laptop? I mean, what is that all about? That's so weird. So honestly, overall, I'm glad you got your laptop back. And with all things considered, I definitely don't blame you for not getting close to your grandmother after that. She sounds super entitled, and you seriously don't need that kind of energy in your life. My girlfriend broke up with me all of a sudden, and despite trying to talk to her about it, I'm seriously at a loss and I don't know what to do. So my ex-girlfriend and I live together with our 2 kids and her parents. I bought a home with them, but she isn't on the contract. About 2 months ago, she decided to break it off between us, telling me she doesn't love me anymore, and since then, communication between us has spiraled up, down, and out of control, then to an abrupt and sudden stop. But I'll explain that at the end. When the breakup first happened, we shared the same room and slept in the same bed. She took her side and I took mine, and we did nothing but sleep the opposite way. We would have fallouts from my behavior. I'm telling you, I lost my mind from being in love with this girl, and I began to snoop through her phone and discovered that she was on a dating app, casually talking to other men. I would call her out and tell her to give me more time to grieve instead of jumping right into the dating scene and hurting my feelings time after time again. I even falsely accused her of sending photos to random men. I was not myself, and I felt so ashamed of my behavior. I eventually told her that I deleted her Gmail from my phone and realistically had no access to anything that she'd do. Her privacy had finally been renewed, but through and through, we talked like casual people throughout the day, mostly about the kids, and several times about issues that she'd have with her parents. I would comfort her, of course. That is, until things changed 3 weeks later. At this point, she had hit up the gym and improved her diet. Once or twice a week, she would party at clubs or go out with her friends to movies. She admitted to me when she traveled close to the mountains late at night with her friends, and she felt the adrenaline rush, but would still have a hole in her heart like something was missing. We would still talk casually, but at moments, I'd make the mistake of admitting I still loved her, and I begged for another chance. And of course, as it would naturally go with no prevail, I would do this for the next 2 weeks on and off, through text messaging and in person, as I drove her to work in the morning, saying things like, "If you could only see things from my perspective, you would change your mind about me. I've changed, yet you don't care." Or I would counter that by saying, "You are the reason the relationship failed," and then immediately regret it and apologize. Yesterday, I tested her by taking out old love letters that she wrote to me and asked her to throw them away because I didn't want them anymore. She responded and told me it was my responsibility and she doesn't care what I do with them. Soon enough, she set up a spare bed in our kids' room and she has been sleeping in there for the past week. The morning commute together is completely silent now, and when she picks me up at night, we don't talk at all. Sometimes throughout the day, she sends me partially aggressive text messages reminding me to keep up with my responsibilities of paying my credit cards so I can move out when my credit improves, and whenever we do interact, she always has an attitude towards me. Her mood has changed a week ago from upbeat to aggressive with me. I've been minding my own business, and I only talk to her when she texts me about important matters. Part of me thinks she found another man, and I'm standing in her path of having to still deal with me being around, like I'm a nuisance to look at. Another part of me wants to believe she's grieving the relationship now, when at first she was too busy to care. Honestly, it's all such a mess, and I seriously don't know what to do. I think the original poster is absolutely out of line. Like seriously, she broke up with you, and she still has to live with you at that. And you very clearly have not gotten over it, so now she can no longer be nice to you, but instead she has to be aggressive and rude just to get you to leave her alone. And I think, in my opinion, you should be seeing it from her perspective. She doesn't want to be with you anymore. It really sucks and it really does hurt, but she doesn't want to be with you. That's the facts that are laid out in front of you, and you need to accept it and move forward with your life. That's my opinion, at least. I think by bothering her consistently every single day to and from work, talking about how you need another chance and you want to be with her and all this stuff, all while basically blaming her for the relationship, on top of trying to test her, is in and of itself incredibly weird, while also not ensuring that you're ever going to get with her ever again. Because in her eyes, it probably comes off as really creepy and really sad. So please, accept the fact that she is not with you anymore and try and find some kind of way to move forward with your life. Learn how to be there for your children and respect the fact that she chose to walk away from you, whether you like it or not. My boyfriend overreacted, and because of that, he kind of ruined my birthday, and now I don't know what to do. So for a bit of context, a few years ago, I was an exchange student in the United States and I made some friends. One of those friends has come on vacation to my country, nearby where I live, and he told me he would be visiting me on Saturday in the city in case I wanted to hang out and see each other one more time. I said we definitely need to meet up, but I didn't have time that day because it's my birthday and I'd be celebrating with my family. The day before, I found out that my family would be celebrating my birthday in the evening, so I told him I did have time to hang out and that when I get there, I will show him around the city. I told my boyfriend of 2.5 years, whom I have a long distance relationship with and was outside at the moment, that I would spontaneously go to the city the day after to show around this friend, since I just found out that I would have time for that, and my boyfriend said okay. On Saturday, I hung out with this person and it honestly really was a fun time. And then I went home, I celebrated my birthday with my family. I texted my boyfriend in the morning before meeting this person, and I FaceTimed him in the evening. I could tell all along that there was something really wrong with him, but he just kept saying nothing. Over FaceTime, I kept asking him what was wrong. I could tell that something was seriously off, and he even raised his voice at me. When I asked about the meaning of that, he just said that he wanted the questions to stop. By the end of the call, I couldn't take it anymore, and I was just like, why do you keep lying to me? If you keep acting like this to me, but you say nothing's wrong, what should I think? Why do I deserve this treatment? And he finally told me that there was something wrong, but that he couldn't tell me. At that point, I just got really mad because he had been kind of ruining my day and making me really worried with his silent treatment. And I said that I was really annoyed because in the past, he already said he would work on his communication. And not only did he not tell me anything on his own, even when I asked him, he then also kept lying, saying that nothing was wrong, but instead being really dry about it. And I was going crazy. I told him that if he couldn't tell me, he could have told me there was something wrong, but that he needed time to try and tell me, instead of lying to me and making me so confused. It was a really exhausting situation. We just went to sleep, and today he was finally ready to tell me what was wrong. Apparently, he wanted to surprise me doing a FaceTime call in which we would look at presents for me if I wanted anything specific. He said he had been really excited planning that and that he felt worthless because I instead spent my birthday with some guy that I knew in the US. He also said that by the time he woke up, I was already on my way over there and we couldn't do the call even if we wanted to. And when he said this, I said that I understand and I'm sorry that it might have been a bit disappointing, but it's not a reason for him to get this upset, as well as giving me the cold shoulder all day and being dry and not telling me what was wrong. I told him I didn't know that he planned on doing anything like that, and that I did tell him the night before that I would be going into the city with this person, so I don't understand why he's so surprised that I did that. I also said that we can call and celebrate together at any other time, and we even had time in the evening, but instead spent the majority of the FaceTime call fighting and arguing with each other, and just trying to figure out what's going on. I also said that I didn't understand why he didn't just reschedule it for another day. Also, my friend was coming to my city on Saturday, with or without me, so it wasn't a plan that I could just reschedule or anything. I told him too that if anything, it's a good thing that I got to go out and do something fun in my birthday, and he should have been happy for me, but if not happy, at least not mad at me. I do understand that he could be disappointed, but more like, oh well, a bit annoying, but we can reschedule it for any other day, and it's not that big of a deal. I get why he would feel worthless when I didn't even know he wanted to do anything, but we still had time on FaceTime, especially in that evening, and his plan could have worked for any other day too. Even after I said all that, he still didn't understand my point and feels uncomfortable and completely upset. I just made plans on my birthday thinking that I had some free time. How on earth did it get to this? I don't know if this is even normal. I'm so tired of this situation. I just need some other people's insight. What should I do? Honestly, I think the fault is on your boyfriend. If he seriously wanted some special time between the two of you to go over gifts or to have FaceTime or whatever, he should have communicated that and said, hey, this is what I want to do. Like long distance relationships like that, you need to have a lot of communication. It's the only way that trust can really be brought about in a relationship. So I really wouldn't stress too much about this. It sounds like, if anything, that he dropped the ball on trying to get this organized, and I don't think you did anything wrong in the slightest. It is becoming harder and harder for me to see a future with my boyfriend, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I've been in a relationship with my current partner for about 8 years now, and while I'd love to continue this relationship, it's getting harder and harder to envision a future with him. We're both 28 years old and have yet to move in together or take any next steps in our relationship because he is broke and makes no effort to change his situation. At first, I tried to give him grace because we graduated just before the pandemic, but he has no desire or drive to work more than 10 hours a week at a job that makes $2,000 a month, and that's before taxes. Also, he spends every waking moment of his life playing video games. Seriously, his gaming consoles are on from the moment he wakes up to the moment that he goes to sleep, day after day, week after week. I'm doing good for myself, and I have tried to help him out by offering to put words in with people in my network, as well as to fix his resume, send him open roles, etc. But he finds an excuse and problems with every solution I offer. He'll say that he doesn't work that kind of job, or working full-time sounds like an absolute nightmare, or he'll say, I want to make money other ways. Admittedly, and embarrassingly, he is so broke that whenever we go out, I always have to foot the bill and drive. He also refuses to get his license because he doesn't want the responsibility of driving and doesn't even know how to pump gas. I've tried multiple multiple times to sit down and talk with him about this, just so we can develop a game plan together, but he always gets frustrated and upset whenever the conversation comes up, and he always says that he'll figure it out within the next few months, and then the cycle just repeats. Truthfully, at this point, it's starting to become extremely unattractive, and I'm beginning to feel like staying in this relationship is doing nothing but holding me back. It really sucks. It really does, because I love him, and outside of this, we have a great relationship. This is all so frustrating, and I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I think we need to first understand that the guy in this story is 28 years old. You're telling me at that age you don't have a driver's license? Like, really? And it doesn't sound like there's any kind of limitation that would be preventing you from getting one. It is quite literally out of just pure laziness. He says he doesn't want the responsibility of driving, but what he's really doing, in my opinion, is stating pretty loudly and clearly that he doesn't want to work and he wants to freeload off of you for the rest of his life. Like, this is absolutely unacceptable. There's no reason for him to be sitting around and doing nothing like this and expecting the world to just open up all these opportunities that he's actively not looking for. You've done everything you can too, by the way. You've tried to make good at getting him some kind of references. You've tried to put a good word in to find him a job. You've networked with people that you trust and basically putting your neck and reputation on the line just for your boyfriend to finally get off his butt and work. And still, with all the multitude of opportunities you've placed at his feet, he still pushes it aside and decides to do nothing. And that, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And honestly, you deserve so much better than this. You sound driven and you sound like you know exactly what you want. So it is unfair that you have this kind of dead weight sitting around doing absolutely nothing. Because let's face it, if he wanted to do something, he definitely would. But unfortunately, it looks like he doesn't. So with whatever you decide to do, I really hope you think about yourself first. Because it sounds like your boyfriend absolutely has thought of himself first as well. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would be incredibly frustrated and I would be wanting some kind of positive change. Otherwise, I just don't see this working out. An entitled Karen falsely accuses me and my coworker of stealing her purse, forcing security to hold all of us behind at the restaurant as they searched through security footage to figure out who did it. And the entire time the investigation was underway, this entitled Karen kept taunting us, claiming that we were gonna go to jail and she was gonna sue the restaurant. Here's what happened. So back in 2014, I was a back waiter on a cruise ship in Hawaii. The ship was in port on a northern island, and my front waiter, who we will call Phil, that's not his real name, as well as myself, were working the dinner shift in the main dining hall. It was, for the most part, your typical steady evening, all the way up until two ladies sat in our section. One of the ladies, who is the Karen of the story, obviously had a little bit too much to drink. In fact, she was red in the face and she was drunk and giggling. During the dinner, the two ladies were having a great time. They were smiling, they were laughing, they were enjoying themselves, and they were actually quite pleasant to wait on. The two ladies finished their dinner and left without any incident happening. Phil and I continued working, but about 20 to 30 minutes later, the drunk Karen returns. She walks right up to me and says to me, "My purse is missing." I replied to her by saying, "Well, no one has sat at the table you and your friend were at since you left, so maybe let's go over there and see if you left your purse behind." I started looking around the table, and it's right about then that the drunk Karen starts shouting at me, "Don't you look for my purse there?" Now this startled me as it happened all of a sudden, and after a moment of being a deer caught in the headlights, I go on to ask what she's talking about. I say to her, "Ma'am, this is where you and your friend ate your dinner. If you don't want me to look for your purse here, then where should I be looking?" This entitled Karen then makes an accusation that truly caught me off guard. She said to me, "You and that other waiter took it, and I want it back right now." Now when she said this, I was stunned, but I promptly responded by saying, "Ma'am, we did not take your purse. Is it possible that you might have left it in your cabin?" But when I said this really upset this entitled Karen, and she snapped back. She said to me, "How dare you ask me such a stupid question? I would know if I left my purse in my cabin. I know you took it, and I want it back right now." With her screaming, anyone and everyone could hear her, and they were now looking at us. Phil rushes over to try and calm her down, while I went to find the restaurant manager. I filled him in on what was going on, and while walking back towards Phil and the drunk Karen, I warned him. I said to him, "Whatever you do not ask her if she'd left her purse in the cabin. I I did, and it only made her angry. The manager thanked me for warning them, but told me he had to ask her that, as this is part of the line of questioning that he had to do in this situation. Sure enough, this entitled Karen got even more angry when he asked her that question. So now we had a full-scale investigation on our hands. Our section had to be closed down. The passengers dining in our area were inconveniently moved to other sections of the restaurant, and the security team had to come in and question all of us. And this drunk entitled Karen got even more angry when the security team asked her if she left the purse in her cabin. After the questioning, the security team split up. Some went to look for the entitled Karen's friend for additional questioning, while the rest of them went to look over the security footage. They told us that this will take some time, as there are multiple cameras that overlapped our section, and they had to review not only the dinner, but the 20 to 30 minutes after the dinner, when the entitled Karen and her friend left the restaurant, all the way up to when she returned to see if we had stolen the purse. But they assured her that if we did steal it, they would see it in the footage. So now it's just the restaurant manager, one security guard, this drunk entitled Karen, Phil, and myself waiting around in our empty section for the security team to finish their investigation. The manager and the security officer did a good job of keeping this entitled Karen calm for a while, but she eventually lost her patience and she started to scream. "Why is this taking so long? I know those two stole my purse and I want it back right now. If you delay any longer, I will call the cops and I will have them on board to arrest those two, and I'm gonna sue this cruise liner." Upon hearing this, Phil had had enough, and he started yelling back at this entitled Karen. I even pulled him off to the side to try and calm him down, but he just gets upset at me and starts to say, "How can you be so calm right now? That lady is threatening to call the cops and have us arrested. Aren't you in the least bit worried that we're gonna be going to jail?" So I told him, why would we be worried? We did not steal her purse. The security team will verify this when they finish looking over the security footage. The purse will be found somewhere and everything will be fine, so we have nothing to worry about. Now, this did little to no good calming Phil down, so I decided to change tactics, and I said to him, think of it this way. We are both still on the clock, and we're getting paid right now to stand around and do nothing while we wait for the security team to finish their investigation. Think of it like we're getting an extra paid break during what would otherwise be a standard busy dinner shift. Well, Phil did not find this amusing, and he yelled back at me and saying, "Why aren't you taking this seriously? We could be going to jail and you're making jokes. Don't you have any pride? Where's your integrity?" So Phil is yelling at me, and this entitled Karen is yelling at all of us. Phil is yelling back at this entitled Karen, and things are getting out of hand. Fortunately, a short while later, the entitled Karen's friend walks back into the restaurant with the missing purse in hand. When asked where she found the purse, well, you probably guessed it by now. It was in this drunk entitled Karen's cabin the whole time. I didn't think that this entitled Karen's face could get any more red from the booze she drank and from how angry she was, but she turned 3 shades of red darker from sheer embarrassment. She snatched the purse from her friend's hand and ran out of the restaurant. The friend tried to apologize on the drunk Karen's behalf, but Phil rejected it, and he started yelling. He said, "That lady came in here, accused us of stealing her purse, threatened to call the cops and have us arrested. Yet when the purse was found, she runs out of here without apologizing to us first? What an absolute jerk." The restaurant manager knew that emotionally, Phil was in no condition to keep working, so he told him to clock out for the rest of the night to calm down, and that he can clock back in the next day once he's done so. The manager apologizes to me and asks if I could do the close down procedure for our section on my own. I had no problem with this, since when I was done, I would be clocking off about an hour earlier than usual. As I was finishing up, the manager calls me into his office and says to me, "I want to thank you for how you handled the situation earlier tonight. You were calm and collected, while Phil was losing his cool. But please don't think I was rewarding Phil by letting him off early for his bad behavior. You acted like the experienced front waiter, while he acted like the immature back waiter. He wasn't in the right mindset to continue working tonight, and I promise in the next week or two, I will find a night to give you off as a reward for how you responded to the situation." The entitled drunk Karen never returned to the main dining hall to apologize in person, but she did write an apology letter, which she had her friend deliver on her behalf. Phil was still incredibly angry and wanted to tear up the letter in a horrible rage. This time though, I managed to calm him down and convinced him to be the bigger man and just accept the letter. It may not be the apology that he wanted, but in the end, we are still receiving an apology. And considering the person we're dealing with, I think that's going to be the best we're probably going to get. What an absolute scumbag that entitled Karen was. She held up everybody at that restaurant. She made everybody move from their section, and she basically threatened the entire restaurant with a lawsuit, as well as getting these two waiters arrested. And it was all literally over nothing. That's the worst part about it. I think if I was in that situation, I would have been upset like Phil. Someone's gonna try and have me arrested all because they're too dumb to know where their purse is. Like, no thank you. I'm absolutely gonna be upset, and I'm gonna let this lady know exactly what's up. I mean, that's some truly entitled behavior if you ask me. And the fact that she didn't have the guts to go back and apologize in person, but instead had to write a note and have her friend deliver it, truly shows how much of a jerk this lady was. So thankfully, this lady never came back, because dealing with someone like this, who's going to make such blatant false accusations against you and your coworker, is something that no one should ever have to deal with. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My girlfriend refuses to make any kind of compromise when making any kind of plans for a holiday, and things have gotten really weird and I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I live in the United Kingdom, and we have been together for the past 2 years. Last year, we went on our first holiday abroad together, and it was really fun. Before the holiday, we had different ideas of the type of holiday that we would like. I preferred more city holiday, where we could look around somewhere, but my girlfriend preferred beach holidays, where we would do nothing and just relax. Now, I did not like the idea of this, since I don't see the point of going abroad just to relax. It seems like a waste of money to me when you can do it at home. We compromised slightly and went to a city with a beach, but still spent some time looking around. When we got back, my girlfriend admitted that a city break will be better, and that she's starting to see beach holidays as being boring. Since November, we've been planning our holiday for this summer. The plan was to travel to 3 cities and spend 10 days exploring what the cities have to offer. We picked one city each, and then decided on the third one together. We had picked really cheap places so that we could set a low budget, especially since I'm trying to focus on increasing my savings. We were supposed to book everything last weekend, but when it actually came down to it, my girlfriend just said, "No, we're not doing that. I would prefer a relaxing holiday near a beach," and then started looking at beach resorts. I asked her what was going on, since we had this planned for months now, and she just suddenly changed her mind. I told her that decisions like this need to be discussed, and she just didn't respond to anything I said. I pointed out that the trips she was looking at were way too expensive anyways, since I'm not willing to increase my budget for the trip. Anytime I tried to compromise and suggest somewhere else that we might be able to go, she would just immediately say no without even looking at it. She kept showing me places that just look so boring for me, since I don't see the appeal of paying a lot of money to just do nothing for a week. I ended up just stopping looking at places that she would pick altogether, and she asked if I was angry, so I told her the truth. I said yeah, especially because she let me get excited about this trip that I thought we were both going to be excited and willing to go on, but it's clear to me that she had no intention of going, and now expects me to just be fine with somewhere that she picks. I pointed out it's supposed to be a joint decision, yet she seems to think it should be her picking it. She just walked out and said, "Fine, looks like we're not going then." Later in the night, she said I was being unfair, and she was only trying to find a nice holiday for the both of us. But I mentioned that we had a nice holiday planned, and that we both agreed to it, and now she's just trying to find one for herself, and expecting me to just agree with it when she knows my thoughts on the type of holidays she's suggesting. I said if we actually want to go away, we need to find a compromise, since there's no way I'm spending a week just laying by a pool or on a beach, because honestly, that does not sound fun to me. But it's clear to me that she doesn't actually want to look around anywhere. She does not want a full holiday experience that both of us could enjoy, and she blatantly just said that if we go away, it has got to be a relaxing holiday. This is all honestly so incredibly frustrating, and I seriously don't know what to do. First and foremost, the way your girlfriend is acting is super inappropriate. Like, you already agreed on some kind of compromise between the two of you, and it seemed like you had some kind of mutual understanding between the both of you that this is what we're gonna do. It's gonna be a mix of the city as well as the beach. That way, both of you can get the most out of the experience and still have a good time and hit the expectations that you were wanting to go with. But it seems like in reality, your girlfriend was just straight up lying to you. She had no intentions of going on this holiday, and she was never gonna let that plan go through. And right now, she's making it seem like it's either her way or the highway. And man, is that just unfortunate and so unfair. her. You had your sights set on some kind of compromise, but she wants it all about her. And I don't blame you for thinking that that kind of vacation is boring. Like maybe that's just your preference. There's nothing wrong with that. So personally, I think there has to be some kind of compromise. And I really don't think this is your fault in the slightest. It sounds like your girlfriend's being incredibly selfish, and it's as if she just doesn't care what you think or what you want to do. She just wants to go with the expensive beach resort and have it her way or the highway, and that's not fair. So if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would spend that much money on something that I would not enjoy. There has to be a compromise when it comes to situations like this, and you can't possibly be expected to drop all this cash on something that you definitely already know you do not like. So hopefully some kind of middle ground can be achieved, because your girlfriend is being super selfish, and the way she's acting is honestly really not fair. Entitled customers get angry at our prices all the time, and I'm always left scratching my head, trying to figure out the best way to handle their angry tirades. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So for some background, I'm a waiter at a small, locally owned business that is very new. I consider our prices to be fair and affordable, but I've had 2 encounters with people furious over the prices. The big issue here is both times I don't know how to respond. My knee-jerk reaction is to offer a discount, but we aren't allowed to give out discounts unless there's something wrong with a meal or if the customer is aggressive, and we're trying to hurry them off the premises. My boss said giving out discounts to everyone complaining about prices sets a precedent that we can't afford to make, and that they can see the prices on the menu before ordering. The first time, a gentleman came in and asked me if it was $3.99 for a chili dog with onion, mustard, and a side of fries, with those specifications, and last time he was here, he spent around $8. He handed me the receipt, which listed me as the server, and I literally just looked at it, read it back to him, telling him it's an additional 32 cents for onions. Well, he got mad at me and said that he just won't come here anymore, and then bought something far more expensive, and I just replied by saying, "I'm sorry to hear that, sir." And unfortunately, my boss was not here for this one. Later that day though, after my boss had come in, I had an issue with a couple, and at risk of giving away where I work, I'll just say that the woman ordered our specialty hot dogs that have heavy toppings and comes with 2 hot dogs, which is just under $7. The man bought 2 chili dogs and added mayo and onion. The specialty hot dogs don't come with a side, but the regular both come with a side of fries. When I informed them of this, they said they realized last time they are more than satisfied with 1 side of fries and only wanted 1. Choosing not to utilize a side does not change the price though, and it's something that's pretty explicitly stated on the menu. When they came up to the register, they were very agitated that their total was about $16 and some cents. I politely started breaking down the prices for them when the man interrupted me by saying, "On your menu, it says you get an extra hot dog for $1.50. And I was a little baffled by this because I've worked here for a while now and have never heard of this. I politely told him I didn't believe that was the case, but that I'd ask my boss if anything, who was, by the way, sitting at the bar like a foot away. As I turn to ask, he gets loud with me and says, "You should just check the menu. That's what it says. Check your menu." So I did what he said, and I tried my best to keep my composure. As I informed him, it is $1.50 for a side on the entrees, not an extra hot dog. And of course, this entitled customer starts to huff and puff, and he yells that he always gets the other hot dog for $1.50, which I know isn't true, as that's literally never been allowed. I finally can't deal with him anymore, and I say that I can't do anything about the prices. I just work here, and my boss is sitting right there if you would like to discuss it with him. Of course, he continues to berate me, throw money at me, and then just leave. In my mind, $16 for 4 hot dogs, toppings, and fries is not bad at all, but that's not what this is about. Is there a better way to handle this? My boss said I didn't do anything wrong and was pretty upset about how they treated me, but I just felt like I could have handled this better if I had any idea of how to even reply to people like this. What should I do? Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that your manager didn't step in. I mean, they were sitting there watching what was going on, sure, but at the end of the day, any kind of disputes like that, in my opinion, really should go to the manager. They should be the one to sort that out and figure out some kind of compromise with the customer, or at least to back you up. I personally cannot stand it when managers just leave you out to dry when they have the authority to get things done. It's not fair in the slightest, and it also loses confidence that you might have in your manager to back you up when conflict goes down. And the fact that they just sat there and watched and didn't say, "Oh, let me help you out," or even be like, "No, that's really our prices. glasses or something. Really was incredibly toxic in my opinion, and that is so unfair for you. So honestly, the fault is on your manager, as you didn't do anything wrong, and they really should have stepped in and helped you out the second that guy raised his voice. My husband has been cheating on me with his ex-girlfriend from college, and after catching him in his lies and confronting him about it, he still repeatedly lied to me and went behind my back just to try and see her. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So the title basically says it all. I caught him lying about why he was flying out of town, and I come to find out it was to see a woman that he dated in college. Throughout our 4-year relationship, including being married for 3, I have caught him talking to her on several different occasions, either on social media or on the phone. In the beginning, she was very unreceptive of his advances, and even told him to stop contacting her if he wasn't going to leave me. Initially, she seemed to keep things fairly platonic, which hurt even more, knowing that he was the one who initiated the conversation. We talked about it, and I told him if he continues his behavior, I am leaving. He promised he would stop and blocked her on everything, and that was 2 years ago. I should also say that he has mentioned being unhappy in the past, and we have even discussed divorce. But as someone who comes from a single-parent household, I am dedicated to this marriage, and I want to make it work. He agreed to try therapy and marriage counseling, and we had been doing all right up until the beginning of this year when he flew out of town on a whim. When I approached him about it, he came clean to me immediately and told me that he has no intention of ending communication with her and is still very much interested in separating. So that pretty much threw therapy right out the window. Last month on Valentine's Day, I found out that the weekend earlier, he had flown her into our city and spent time with her. And that honestly was the last straw. It broke my heart and I ended up moving out of the house. I left my rings on the kitchen table and I have never felt more disrespected in my life. But here's the thing that really has me second guessing everything. Since I've been staying at my friend's house, he has made every attempt to salvage our marriage. He says that he's blocked her on all social media accounts, as well as blocking her number in general on his phone. I want to believe him because I do truly love him, and I don't know if I will ever trust him fully again, or if we will ever get back to how we were before all of this happened. Thankfully, we don't have any children, but we just only bought a house together, and we have a small business that we run. This is all so very confusing, and I seriously don't know what to do. What an awful situation. Your boyfriend has gone from thinking about it to actively doing it, and I think I would have lost my mind as well if I found out that my significant other flew out their ex to spend some time with them. Like, that is absolutely obnoxious, and it's so inappropriate. Not to mention the fact that they found out about this on Valentine's Day. Like, that is absolutely brutal. So honestly, I don't blame you for moving out and staying with a friend, because you said it best. You don't know if you can ever trust him again. And sure, this guy is probably seeing his marriage going up in flames. And honestly, that's his own fault. He did this to the marriage, not you. And while it's great that he's starting to see the error of his ways, I don't think that gives you any obligation to have to entertain anything that he has to say. And how on earth can you trust anything that he's saying? He says that he blocked her on everything, including social media and his phone, but he has also said that in the past and still went behind your back to do all these awful things. It's hard to believe if anything he's saying is true in the slightest, and that's not fair for you at all. You deserve way better than this. But I think the one silver lining here, if you do decide to break up with him and divorce him in general, is the fact that you don't have any children. That is honestly massive. If there were kids in the mix, this would have made things a lot harder. And while this decision is still very hard, hopefully with whatever you decide to do, you think about yourself first, because your husband has absolutely destroyed your confidence in him. And I don't blame you for second guessing his intentions as well as your marriage. An entitled old Karen throws one of her objects at me that she was trying to check out with in the line at TJ Maxx. And not only did she cut my arm in the process, she then tried to lie about the entire situation, painting me as the bad guy and calling me an idiot. Things got so bad that we even had to call the police just to try and mitigate the situation. Here's what happened. So to start things off, I work at TJ Maxx, and yesterday a stupid entitled customer threw a yellow spiky ball that we sell at the store directly at me in a fit of rage. And the one we sell at TJ Maxx must either be made or manufactured in California, because on the backside of the price sticker, it had a Prop 65 sticker, meaning that this product was found to give you cancer or birth defects in California. So to rewind a little bit, this entitled Karen comes to my register. She's about 80 to 85 years old, but really she's old enough to know better than to do what she did. started. She grabs it from the cart and shows me the sticker. She says that she doesn't want the item because she doesn't want to get cancer from it. Thinking I'm being helpful, I politely explained to her that it was just very likely the item wouldn't be giving her cancer, but that the state of California legally has to display those stickers on the items, especially if they're made in that state. For context, we live in North Carolina, so I can't really fault an older person for not knowing California law. This lady then suddenly flips a switch and starts screaming at me. She says, "I said I don't want it. Don't you dare try to force me to take it. I do not want cancer." Then, suddenly out of nowhere, this entitled Karen hauls back and throws this spiky sphere directly at me. Now, these things weigh less than a pound, but it's a ball covered in metal spikes, and it was thrown pretty hard at me from a distance of maybe 6 feet. So the spot where it hit my arm has some dotted scrapes on it, and where it rolled down my arm also has a line of scrapes. Honestly, my cat has done worse, and it's already fading, but still, I couldn't believe that she did that. Now, because it was still early in the workday, the line wasn't very long, so when she started screaming at me, it went quiet. And so the associates in makeup, handbags, and jewelry, as well as the few customers around us, all stopped what they were doing to see what was up, meaning I had about 12 witnesses to her throwing the item at me in the first place. And it's right about then that I'm pretty sure this old entitled Karen realized what she had done, because she went quiet, she dropped her face, and started unloading the cart. But I wasn't going to take this sitting down, as I escalated this to a point where the police got involved to deal with this entitled Karen. My coworker had come right down as the ball was thrown, so she got on the headset right when it was thrown to get the manager, who also came running. In the melee, the manager misheard and thought I had punched a customer or something like that, but we set the situation right. When she got up to the front, she asked the old lady why'd she'd thrown it, and the old lady says to her, "I told the little idiot I didn't want to get cancer from it, and she tried to make me buy it. If she had just shut up and done her job, I wouldn't have thrown it at her." Now, up until that point, I was fixing to just let it go. I was going to refuse her service, and the manager probably would have asked the lady to leave without service as well, but she decided to call me an idiot, and then act like I was forcing her to buy a cancer-causing object. I very quickly told the manager all I did was explain why the sticker was on the object in an effort to ease the customer's concerns. I was never trying to make her buy it, but the entitled old Karen said, "You're a liar, you little brat." And then she claimed that I wanted her to no longer be alive, which is honestly crazy. My manager then asked me what I would like to do next, since she sees that I'm injured. I told her to please call the police, because I'm not about to be assaulted by anyone, but especially not for something as stupid as this. And wouldn't you guess it, the entitled old Karen begins to beg and cry, pleading with us not to call the police. The entire time she's wailing on and on about how I'm the one in the wrong. I was trying to make her do things that she didn't want, and I was just a mean person in general. But here's the kicker. She is still unloading her shopping cart. This entitled Karen seriously thought she was going to be able to purchase her items. She even asked me why I wasn't ringing her items up. Anyways, the cops show up, and there's 2 cruisers and 4 cops. One of them takes me to the side, and the other one takes the entitled Karen over to the other side. My manager takes the other 2 to the office to show them the security camera footage. Now, here's the thing. I had witnesses and I had an injury, so it was kind of cut and dry. The cops asked me if I'm sure I want to press charges, and I asked them if I actually had a chance of the lady getting punished, or would a judge just let her go because of her age. The cops said I actually have a pretty decent chance, and based on the old lady's conduct, a judge probably wouldn't be too favorable, especially considering that I'm pregnant in a county that's red as a fire truck. They told me she opened right up to them and admitted that she threw it at me. And a few minutes later, when they read her the Miranda rights, she admitted to having thrown the ball again. They said that her confession, coupled with the camera footage and all the eyewitness accounts, the judge might not even need to speak with me. They took pictures of my arm, got my contact information, and said I might get a call, I might not get a call. Because it was Tuesday, this entitled Karen would probably get a quick bail hearing, but she'd probably just be released on low bail or no bail. Chances are, even if her lawyer sucks, she'll probably get a slap on the wrist. And to top it all off, I made the cop laugh when I asked him if I could do the wrist slapping, preferably with the same item she threw at me. What in the world is wrong with people? This lady went from like 0 to 100 really quickly. This entitled Karen literally straight up threw a fastball at this lady, all because they were just trying to help them out. Like, there's no reason for that. There's no reason for people to get hurt, all because this entitled Karen wants to be weird. So hopefully this entitled Karen got more than just a slap on the wrist, because you can't go around hitting people like that and expect to get away with it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Our neighbors of 4 years have turned their front yard into a junkyard, and I'm so tired of looking at it, I seriously don't know what to do. So we live in a cul-de-sac and are pretty friendly with our neighbors. The house to the left of us, a family of 5, do not maintain their property in the slightest. The side yard that borders ours is disgusting. The man is a hoarder, so he is constantly trash picking and keeps it all in the side yard for us and anyone that visits us to see. We went as far as spending over $1,000 installing a privacy line of trees that haven't grown much, by the way, just to have some kind of line. And honestly, everyone else on our block makes sure that our properties look nice. We spend time, energy, and money to do this. Aside from the junk, which includes old chairs, bicycles, basketball nets, broken trampolines, huge piles of brush and weeds, as well as random metal things that no one would even know what it is. Aside from all of that, there is standing water and now a tent, meaning 4 posts and a tarp, has been put up. It literally looks like a homeless shelter. The side of the house is covered in Lowe's Tyvek, and this is from when he started a project 3 years ago. My husband and I don't know the best way to approach it. The thing is, we want to remain on good terms, and we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. However, they know it looks bad. They even joke about it looking horrible, and we have also insinuated that yes, it looks really bad, but they don't do anything about it. I want to call the township, and my husband wants to have a conversation, but we don't really know what to say. Also, as a side note, time and money is not an issue for these people. They are constantly out getting drinks and doing things, as well as buying all sorts of things. I swear, every other day she is posting pictures of her getting drinks and food with her friends, which irritates me even more. She gets her nails done, her lips done, she gets tattoos, and she goes to the gym. But if you have time to do all of that stuff, why not just clean up your yard as well? It's all so very frustrating, and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, that's really disgusting. The fact that you're living next to someone who doesn't take care of their house, and they just don't care about the outward appearance of things, is really toxic in my opinion. Like sure, if you want to collect things and you want to have some kind of system where you refurbish cars or junk metal or stuff like that, there's a time and a place to do that. But storing all of that stuff on your front yard for the entire neighborhood and your fellow neighbors to have to deal with is honestly so weird to me. And it's so inappropriate as well. I think it's really a catch-22 at this point, because if you're good enough friends with them, there is a chance where you might be able to have some kind of conversation with them, but it really depends on how they would react. Is it someone where it's worth having some kind of conversation and being like, look, you're lowering everyone else's property value. Is there any way we can help you clean up? And then kind of just go from there. Maybe there's a future where they might be willing to take some help from you as well as someone else you know, and just help them clean out what they don't need. Or you could even use the side of the house as an excuse to be like, oh look, your house isn't done yet. Is there any way I could help you finish it up? And then maybe weasel your way into also mentioning, hey, there's a bunch of garbage on your front lawn. Could we also get rid of that? But obviously in a nice way, because what I said I think would probably come off as really rude. And then maybe go from there. I think the original poster has the right idea though as well. You could just call the township and see if they could take care of it. Getting a call or a note or some kind of violation from the township very well might be the thing to get them off their butts and start cleaning up the junkyard that is their front yard. So hopefully this all works out for you, because I can't imagine having to live next to that every single day and still trying to maintain some kind of property value in the long run. My girlfriend left me after 6 years of being together, and I am now beyond devastated, and I seriously don't know what to do. So I met this girl, we'll call her Kate, that's not her real name, while I was going to college. She had a mutual friend who introduced us, and we headed off on Snapchat and went on a movie date. This girl really breathed new life into me, and a few months later, I asked her to be my girlfriend. Things were awkward at first, but a few months later, we admitted that we'd fallen for each other. We were seeing each other every weekend, and sometimes during the week to watch movies, go on road trips, or simply just to be in each other's company. Life was amazing. However, she was a rave girl. She loved to go out with her single friends on the weekends to go to concerts and events. I was always anxious, but I trusted her, and I never told her that she couldn't go. I really wanted her to enjoy herself. We took a lot of vacations together. We went to Italy, Spain, and then the Netherlands together, sometimes even with her family. We had a lot of memories, and I felt so welcomed by her family. When I was 21, I was diagnosed with a rare spine condition. Since I was 18, I had a lot of back pain, and I started to feel my legs lose coordination. It turned out to be a cancerous tumor inside my spinal cord. cord, and it had done some damage. I got surgery, learned how to walk again, and got radiotherapy. I knew I had to beat this to get back to her side and to help build our future together. She was so supportive of me, I couldn't thank her enough, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this girl. However, I noticed she never wanted to go on any dates with me. She just wanted to sit in her bedroom and watch TV together at the weekends, or just go out with her friends. It's like she never wanted to have fun with me. She made such a big effort with them, but I never mentioned it. I never stopped her from having her fun. Fast forward to last week, and she had been going out multiple times at the weekends and didn't have any time for me. She went out clubbing 6 times in the space of a month, and I hadn't seen her for nearly 3 weeks. I asked her to plan a dinner together, and she was very sarcastic about it. On Valentine's Day, I surprised her with flowers and a box of her favorite chocolates, and she got nothing for me. I was feeling deeply neglected, but I was still madly in love with her. She promised that she wasn't going out for 2 weeks, but I got a message before I went to her house. She said to me, "You're gonna hate me, but I've been invited to a works night out tomorrow." So I said to her, "It's fine, I'll just see you tonight," bearing in mind that we were just gonna sit in and watch TV together. The fact that she's had more days out with her friends in the past month than we've had in the last 2 years was honestly crushing me. She seemed distant that night, but we still held each other and talked and all the other stuff we normally do. Saturday morning came and I was ready to leave, but I couldn't get a response out of her. She was buried in her phone, so I kissed her goodbye and I left. Later that night, I get the awful "we need to talk" message, right as she was going out. This filled me with immense anxiety. She then said she will do it when she's sober the next day. I thought that it was a horrible thing to do. She struck fear in my heart and left me with it all night. The next day, I go to her house and we talk. She was hugging me and tearful. I knew what was about to happen. She told me that she loves me, but she's not in love with me. I broke down. I had to leave. I went to my car and I started screaming. After everything I've been through these past 3 years, things just keep getting worse for me. I go home and I was howling. My whole world was falling apart. I spent a quarter of my life with this girl and now it's over. She said she was feeling this way for 6 months now and never told me. In my head, that just meant she checked out of the relationship before leaving me, so she's pretty much over it. It took her less than 12 hours to remove me from her bios. It crushed my soul. My chest felt tight, and it was as if I was carrying a block of ice in it. It's been 9 days since she's left, and I gave my all to this girl, and I would do anything to make her happy. She even admitted that she didn't want to go on dates with me, as she didn't see the point. Since she is an extremely attractive girl, it won't be hard for her to find a new man. The thought of her with someone else is absolutely destroying me inside. I feel as if she is toying with me. She sends me a Snapchat after a few days of no contact. I reply, and she just ignores me. She's turned so cold towards me. I have literally never been so low in my life. I can't get her out of my head. She's all I ever think about. I try to keep myself busy, but I can't escape the bad thoughts. I never did anything wrong. I wasn't controlling. I never glanced at another woman. I was supportive and loving, and I still lost everything. She was my world, and I doubt she's coming back. My confidence is at an all-time low. I don't think I'm attractive, and I can't see me ever getting over her. I'm afraid that I'll be alone forever now, and I seriously don't know what to do. From the sounds of it, it really does seem like you're in the thick of it. You just broke up with this girl that obviously meant a lot to you, and it sounds like she did this in a way that was really, really toxic. And honestly, I'm just so sorry you had to deal with that. It's not fair for you in the slightest, because from the sounds of it, you really did everything right. You tried to make sure she was happy, you tried to make sure that you weren't controlling, and you tried to connect with her on multiple occasions. From the sounds of it, you were a good boyfriend. You probably did everything right, and it doesn't sound like you were going behind her back, and you weren't doing anything to try and cause her to check out of the relationship. So at least let that be your silver lining in the situation. But overall, maybe just give it some time. This situation is obviously very fresh in your life, so it's understandable that you're really going through it. And hopefully one day, with all things considered, you can move forward and find happiness in your life again. Because honestly, you deserve it. I caught my girlfriend texting her ex-boyfriend, as well as the fact that she was deleting the history just to try and hide it from me. And now I seriously don't know what to do. So I had been casually seeing a girl for 4 months until we decided to make it official and exclusive at the start of this month. Things have been going great. However, one day while I was over at her place, I had seen she had gotten a phone call from her ex-boyfriend, which she brushed off as him being crazy and wanting her back. There was an incident a few days after we became official where she checked my phone and found DMs from back in November, which is when we first started talking, where I exchanged some flirtatious messages with someone I knew from college. She blew up at this situation, as well as with a few other DMs that she found from that same time period, and basically considered ending our relationship right then and there. She was upset because when she asked about some of these other girls in the past, I just described them as being friends. Would I be hurt about that too? Sure. However, there was plenty of evidence and even more recent interactions with those same women where I either ignored them or gave them dry responses. Her checking my phone like that, however, got me a little suspicious of her, and I know it's toxic, but a few days later, I decided to check her phone to see what she might be hiding. My curiosity about her ex, given that she had received calls from him, led me to search for his name, only for me to find messages talking about how she actually saw him late in January and even hung out with him to celebrate his birthday. She wrote to a friend saying that they're going out and they're getting some food, which she explained meant her, the ex, and a large group of friends. However, I really wasn't sure what to believe, given that she had lied about them hanging out to begin with. Regardless, this had happened before we were officially dating and exclusive. So regardless of how upset I was, I decided to let it go, given that I myself wasn't super clean before we started dating either. Flash forward to a week later, and she's been acting really strange with me, saying that she's feeling off and sees us differently. She starts talking about how her timeline in life was to get married and have kids in the next 2 years, and mine is in the next 4 or 5, so she doesn't feel good about waiting that long, which is totally understandable stuff, but we did discuss it and put it behind us. Later that same day, I'm having friends over for a housewarming, and she gets a little too intoxicated and goes to bed early. By the time I say bye to my friends and clean up a bit, it's around 1:30 in the morning. I walk into my room, and I see her asleep with her phone just out of reach from her hand. I then notice that she's gotten a few text messages from her ex. I know it's wrong, but it was so late that my intrusive thoughts got the better of me. I see 2 messages sent at 1:30, responding to a message that she had sent that I couldn't see because she deleted it. She actually went as far as to delete these messages from her recently deleted folder as well. He was using that iMessage feature where you reply to a specific message, so I could see that she had sent him something that night, but I unfortunately could not see the contents of the message. I lost my cool and searched more through her messages to find recent messages from her friends telling her to block her ex, and even a message from back in January where she was complaining that her and the ex didn't spend any quality time that night, if you know what I mean, all because he found out about me. The worst part about all of this was that I replied to the ex-boyfriend with a question mark, and I sent it through her phone. And I did that because I had no context of any of the conversations I was seeing. He then proceeds to message me back asking why I'm up so late, and if I plan on picking him up or should he Uber to her place. Her ex-boyfriend was so casual about this as well, asking for an Uber or trying to set up some kind of plan. It all just really set me off. So I continued to play along and I asked him to Uber. Well, as it goes along, we're actually at my place, not hers. And by the time he arrived there, it was already 4 in the morning. At that point, I just put her phone down and I saw the string of calls he had made after arriving. Is it my proudest moment? No, but I regret nothing. The next morning when I confronted my girlfriend about it, she says the usual that it's not what it looks like. She claims she only texted him to share some recent changes in her life that would legally allow her to get married in the next 2 years. She then tells me that she kept talking to said ex as he was sharing his plans to buy a house soon, and that he apparently told her that he wanted her back and that she could move in, and in 2 years they could be married and have kids. It turns out this legal issue that she had was the main reason why she and her ex broke up, because they couldn't get married because of it. She's claiming though that all that doesn't matter to her, and that she loves me so much, and that she'd rather be with me than follow the timeline that she had set in mind. But none of that really sits right with me anymore. And to be honest, I don't know how I can trust anything she says now. Honestly, writing this all out shows me what I should do, but I do really love her, and outside of all of this messy stuff, we really do make each other happy. We've spoken on end about our futures together. I even met her parents, and there were plans for her to meet mine. Is it possible to move past something like this? Could you ever trust someone again after they did something like that? I'm struggling to feel like I ever could, and I seriously don't know what to do. For me, this is an absolute deal breaker. If I was in your shoes, I would be breaking up with her. This is not something I'm gonna take sitting down. She's going behind your back and talking to her ex-boyfriend, and I seriously don't believe a single thing that she's saying. So hopefully with whatever decision you make, I really hope you think about your own good, because it sounds like she had some other plans in mind, and those plans absolutely did not involve you. When you subscribe, make sure sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.